I now call this session into order at 10:15 a.m. Eastern Time. With that, are there any motions on the floor?
Motion to open the floor for PO nominations.
Any seconds? Okay. Any objections? Seeing none, hearing none, we now open the floor for PO nominations. Are there any nominations?
Motion.
Senator Inamdar. Sorry.
I move to nominate Senator Mandare.
Humbly accept.
Any further nominations?
Motion.
State that.
Close the floor for PO nomination.
Any seconds? All right. We'll assume unanimous consent. Therefore, Senator Mandare, congratulations. You are presiding officer for session 1. You now have the floor.
I thank the chair. I'm just gonna put my link in the chat really quickly. Oh wait, no, I've sent that to Victor. My bad. All right. Okay. Yeah. So you guys should have the link. I'm just gonna go over my my NSDA procedure. My gaveling procedures. So they're standard. I'll just hold up a paper that says 2 minutes at 2 minutes. Paper that says 2 minutes and 30 seconds. And then because there's a 15-second grace period, your final time signal will be at 3 minutes. And then from 3:05 to 3:10, I'll just start counting down from like 10 seconds. Yeah, those are my gaveling procedures. And then for questioning, at 20 seconds, I'll just hold up a fist. And then at 30 seconds, I'll verbally cut you off and move on to the next person. Are there any questions, Senator Yan?
I'm on the spreadsheet twice. I think you might have replaced me with someone else.
You're on it twice. Oh,
Yeah.
sorry. Oh, yeah, my bad.
I also don't see my name on speech recency, but I do see it on questioning.
That's
right.
Yeah, I actually, yeah, okay. See, are there any more questions? Okay. Seeing that we already do have a preset docket, which is first star and moon plan and then second 6 arrows, are there any first affirmative speeches for the star and moon plan? Senator Vela unopposed.
This Senator Vela, spelled V-E-L-A, for all my judges. I'll take silence as an indicator of readiness for my PO and judges. So if you're not ready, just scream. And with that, I'll begin on my first word. A house of cards. Each card is a region, a city, a community. But with one action, that house can swiftly come crashing down. And that's exactly what will happen to Turkey if we fail to pass the Star and Moon plan. Fragmentation, instability will sweep through the region, leaving space for adversaries to seize control. Now, the single most important goal in today's debate is to ensure political stability in Turkey, because without stability, any democratic or humanitarian gains will be lost in continuous warfare. It's because only the Star and Moon plan can provide the stability you pass. But why put the same regime back into power who started this mess? It's because the alternative risks regional fragmentation, as Turkey's political culture right now is driven by religious and conservative nationalism. As the U.S. Department of State in 2022 found that roughly 88% of them self-identify themselves as nationalistic Sunni Muslims, meaning that if free elections would likely legitimize a theocracy or hyper-authoritarian regime, not a Western-style democracy, as the Middle East Institute in 2022 tells us that if elections in Turkey were to take place, it can entrench Sunni conservatism and nationalism, sidelining minorities and shifting Turkey to be more like Iran. Now, the Star and Moon plan solves this issue in 2 main reasons. First, democracy right now in Turkey could empower extremists, but by backing the current regime, it prevents those groups from gaining power. History, even in this nation, shows that democracy alone does not prevent oppression. States in this union legally upheld slavery for decades, proving that elections can legitimize injustice without strong institutions. Second, is that this plan preserves a single centralized authority dependent on US and NATO, giving the US leverage to push reforms before elections. ensures that institutions come first, not after power is won. Because if Turkey was dependent on the US, it could lead us to pressure Turkey to enact reforms in response to this issue, like with a strong Bill of Rights, a strong judicial system, and a checks and balances system that like ours. But what happens if we don't pass this legislation? We will only see further fragmentation in Turkey, which could trigger regional conflict and instability due to countries like Russia in the region. As the General Secretary of NATO, Mark Rutte, said just days ago that further fragmentation of Turkey and Europe would invite adversaries like Russia to exploit that instability and turn the region from NATO to Russia. Act now. Keep Turkey standing. Don't let that house of cards fall and come crashing down. Pass.
Speech time 3 minutes 10 seconds. Once again, 3 minutes 10 seconds. We're now in line for 4 blocks of questions. Questioners rise. Senator Tuli unopposed.
Hey, Representative.
If both the Sunnis and the current regime are oppressive options, why not choose the insurgents that promise a free democracy?
Yeah, because if you allow elections to take place, that can intrude a more hyper-authoritarian region than the one we have now. If we can keep the current regime in power, we can pressure them to enact reform before extremists.
How do we know that the oppressive Sunni is 100% going to win this democratic election?
Thank you. So if NATO unity depends on rewarding authoritarian leaders, is that alliance actually stable?
Okay, so basically, no, but that's not the point here.
No, answer my question. Can you please answer my question?
I just gave you the answer. It's no, but that's not the point. That's not the point. Because if we allow a more democratic process, it could allow more extremists and a more hyper-authoritarian region to come into power.
What we want is stability. That's the whole point of this.
Because
yes.
if we continue with this...
Senator Dubinak.
Thank you, Chair. Representative, great speech. Why is stability for a Turkish dictator worth handing a total naval victory to Russia in the war against Ukraine?
If we don't give them stability, a more extremist group will take power.
What do you mean handing that power to Putin means allowing Bosphorus Strait
is that
open
he himself said he is going to resign. So that means we can put in someone who will actually bring more stability.
Are you saying the presence of elections creates a threat to democracy?
Because right now the current system in Turkey is unstable.
Creates a threat to democracy. Is that what you're telling me?
What did you say?
Are you saying the presence of elections creates a threat to democracy?
I'm not saying that. I'm just saying with the current, yeah, because the current system that is in place right now is creating that. But if we can reform the system there is now, then
reform the system without elections.
Your question elections, but the speaker on the questioner may be muted. Okay, seeing that was a speech in the affirmative for the Star and Moon plan, speakers for the 6 Arrows plan rise. Senator Yan unopposed.
I thank the chair. My name is Senator Yan, spelled Y-A-N. Everybody, let me know when you're ready. There are people in Istanbul right now making decisions based on sound. The sound of whether the next explosion is closer than the last. That reality is what this bill affects. That uncertainty exists because nothing about this conflict is settled. Turkey is in an active civil war that has not stabilized or slowed down in any meaningful way. The Department of War assessment tells us that Turkish forces are still fighting while losing soldiers to defection and suffering economic strain at the same time. NATO itself is destabilizing under pressure, with Turkey, Greece, and Bulgaria all leaving the alliance simultaneously. This situation is far from stable. And because of that instability, the 6 Arrows plan is the better policy, while the Star and Moon plan escalates the conflict without a clear solvency. The core problem with the Star and Moon plan is that it treats strength as a substitute for planning. This bill assumes that firm messaging will automatically produce surrender from every actor involved. In practice, it relies on the idea that American power alone will resolve a conflict that is already unpredictable. Star and Moon Plan also removes flexibility. It secures Congress into predetermined actions while the situation is still developing. Executive flexibility may be controversial in other political debates, but here it is crucial, especially since the events are happening as we speak right now. When things change quickly, hard locks make it even harder to respond responsibly and easier to escalate without intending to. In the bill, a lot of things are also assumed. It is filled with planned messaging and deployment commitments that immediately raise questions about whether they even work. Debating whether a policy functions is not the same thing as proving that it reduces harm. By contrast, 6 Arrows gives us room to respond as things change, which matters more in a situation that is as unstable as is now. As to why I like 6 Arrows, it's just a more realistic policy. The NATO letter explicitly calls for cooperation and caution during this fragile moment. The Star and Moon Plan goes directly against that, while the alliance is already breaking apart. Our plan could reduce pressure without trying to force an immediate surrender that could start an even greater war. The Star and Moon Plan's benefit is that the appearance of control through strength, but 6 Arrows' benefit is reducing the chance of mass civilian death and wider war. And when appearing strong is weighed against lives and war, 6 Arrow wins every single time. The reason that this matters is what happens next. The presidential letter that tells us that a Turkish victory in Istanbul could make Russian naval access through the Bosphorus extremely likely and will escalate the war in Ukraine. 6 Arrows keep the situation from rising while options still exist for us, and it reduces the chance that this conflict will turn into something much harder to stop later on. People have waited too long for help that will show up. Hope only matters if we choose to be that help today. Thank you.
Speech time, 2 minutes, 56 seconds. Once again, 2 minutes, 56 seconds. We're now in line for 4 blocks with questions. Questioners rise. Queen Senators Yoffe and He. That will first go to Senator He.
Just to clarify, how do we know like the insurgency or like the rebels won't also let Russia's fleet through the Bosphorus Strait?
Well, from what we know, Turkey is the one in contact with Russia, and we have not seen.
That's fine. Let's say some like Kurds take over, right? They're going to be really unstable. How are they going to stop a Russian fleet through the Bosphorus Strait?
Well, that's why we're passing this bill to help them stabilize themselves after creating a new Turkish state.
Okay, under that same logic, can we use that leverage on Turkey's forces as well?
Hi, when we pass this policy, Turkey rejoins NATO, right?
It is possible.
No, it isn't like possible. Like that's what they're going to do, right?
In the letters, he says that it is.
He said he's going to do that. So when they rejoin NATO, who is guarding the strait? It's going to be like the U.S., right?
Well, it's going to be the new Turkish government because that's going to be the plan.
So the strait is right now guarded under NATO like laws by the U.S. and like Macedonia.
Bouncing off that previous line of questioning, if we help out Turkey, wouldn't they be more incentivized to help us out by blocking that strait, making sure Russia can't access it?
Well, as we all know, the president of Turkey right now is becoming a dictator slowly, and we can't control that.
When we help them, we can turn that autocracy into a democracy. No,
well, we can no longer rely on them as an ally because we see that they're an authoritarian government.
If we're literally helping them out, they're going to be more incentivized to listen to us. That's kind of how it works.
Senator, do we or do we not need to maintain NATO's integrity?
Yes, we do.
So if we refuse to act upon Article 5 and we show that we won't act upon it in the future, are we not just corrupting NATO and throwing it away in the first place?
We're acting on what the NATO has sent us a letter on directly.
Right, but we didn't act on Article 5 in the first place. Shouldn't we at least try to make amends by acting upon it in the future?
Well, let's not look on the past. Let's try to get into the...
But we need to look on the past because if we throw away NATO in the first place, then we're sabotaging our biggest alliance.
We can't look on the past all the time. We need to look towards the future.
We need to look on it now. It's not relevant.
But the speaker and the questioner may be muted.
Thank you.
I just want to remind everyone that this is a virtual tournament, so like if you speak over people in questioning, nobody can hear you. Okay, because that was a speech in the 6 Arrows plan, can all speakers for the Star and Moon plan please rise? Once again, the chair calls for all Star and Moon plan speakers. Are there any motions on the floor? Okay, seeing none, The chair highly frowns upon a one-sided debate, but debate must go on. Speakers in the 6 arrows plan, please rise.
Motion.
State
1
that.
minute in-house recess.
Are there any seconds?
Second.
Any opposed? Seeing none, the chair unilaterally moves to a 1 minute in-house recess.
I didn't have prep. I told you guys I have the late rounds here, so. Did nobody
Who is like
prepare their
okay,
own
like
speeches?
who is like close to like being even like done on like a star and moon?
I thought we had 2 people already done.
Yeah, where's that other person?
Was it Gullapali or?
No, I was going to write one on Star and Moon because I saw that the splits were originally bad.
I know there was 2 people.
Okay, who has like a constructive done? There's like okay, is every single star and moon person writing it around?
I need like a speech. Like I need someone else to speak.
Just
if
do
I
the
wanted to get
GPT
out.
one again. Just GPT it all again.
No, I would never. What?
There's no so like genuinely like no one has anything.
Okay, what if we break cycle, then who has 6 arrows right now?
Who just has a speech?
I thought there was like 5 people prepped for stars.
Recess has now elapsed. Are there any motions on the floor? Senator Tuli.
Motion for 1 minute in-house recess.
Are there any seconds?
Second.
Are there any opposed? Seeing none, we're now in a 1 minute in-house recess.
Okay, I can give a 6 arrows AF, but like I don't want to be punished because the neg just like I mean the like the star and moon is just like not ready to debate. Like this is the second cycle. Like I can give an AF, but like I just want like you know what I mean? I don't want to get punished for breaking cycle.
I mean, I could try finish if you were to give an F, I could try finishing up the neg that I'm current or like not the neg, but the sun and moon, the star and moon build that speech that I'm currently writing. I could try finishing that up once you're done speaking to keep the debate flowing.
Can I get like a confirmation for the judges if I'm gonna get dropped because like I broke cycle?
No, cycle's already been broken. You won't be punished.
Okay. Is everyone else good? Okay, I'm just gonna assume that. Just wait till the end of the recess.
Okay, the 1 minute recess is now elapsed. The chair calls for any 6 arrow plan speakers. Senator Tuli.
Hey guys, this is Senator Tuli. That's Tuli. Again, Tuli. Speaking for the first time. I'm going to assume all of my judges are ready. If you're not, then just start yelling at me. I'm gonna wait about 10 seconds and I'll start. The Kurdish civilians that stand up to the oppressive Turkish military are dead proof of ethnic cleansing. Take Fırat Doymak. He was just one of the hundreds of Kurds hiding in a cellar from the Turkish military until a soldier found him. 178 innocent Kurds were gunned down that day. And to cover the blood, President Erdogan bulldozed the entire crime scene. Now, I want you to help the Turkish insurgency bulldoze Erdogan by fortifying their supply lines to win the war for a state free of oppression. Now, I disagree with Representative Vela entirely. A democratic election will always yield better reform than an autocracy. We want the insurgents to win here. But that only happens if the Kurdish offensive can actually march on the capital Ankara. But that's not very likely because the Kurds are losing the battle at the Lakelands. The preliminary assessment published by our Department of War on the Battle of the Lakelands identifies that the Turkish military is rapidly coming closer and closer to cutting off the Kurd supply lines and forcing a full retreat. But here's the bigger issue. The Kurdish offensive would also have to turn around if the supply lines are cut, which means that there's no march on Ankara and the Kurdish are going to lose the war, essentially solidifying the oppressive Turkish dominance over the oppressed Kurds. Now that's an operational travesty. Here's how the 6 arrows plan is going to fix that. Lines 5 and 6 are going to deploy 30,000 US troops to specifically protect Kurdish supply lines. And Section 3 even allocates $5 billion to the Kurds alone. Now, that needed support gives the Kurdish offensive the time and resources needed to make that march on Ankara and win the war. In fact, that same preliminary assessment by our Department of War concludes that a win at the Battle of the Lakeland with our extra support would provide the Kurdish offensive enough time to march on Ankara and finally win. And remember, under Section 2, we even pledge full military support to supply all weapons and resources needed. But even then, the negation is going to come up here and explain that we need to have our control over the Baltic Strait. But remember, the Kurds and all of the insurgents have promised that they're not going to let Russia through. In the end, we replace the oppressive Turkish government with the democratic Kurdish and Turkish states. Here's what's at stake if we don't. The United Kingdom Human Rights Commission in July of 2025 quantifies that if the Turkish government regains full power, 15 million Kurds will be vulnerable to worsened oppression, especially after today's civil war. I want you to help the oppressed Kurds finally beat their oppressors. I want you to pass the 6 Arrows plan.
Speech time, 3 minutes, 9 seconds. Once again, 3 minutes, 9 seconds. Questioners rise. Once again, the chair calls for any and all questioners. Between Senators Inamdar and Senators Yoffe, that will first go to Senator Inamdar.
Why do we think that like supporting a bunch of rebels is going to be like a better alternative for political stability compared to like an established government?
Yeah, so if the established government is massacring its civilians and ethnically cleansing minorities,
I think we
not
can both
stability at
agree,
all.
like I think we can both agree that like the Turkish government is not like good, right? But
Yeah.
at the same time, right, these rebels are like rebels, right? We can't trust rebels to go and create like
Okay,
an
we were
actual
rebels against the British government. Like we can't label them rebels and like not
Right.
think that like they might not be
Wait,
good.
sure,
Like they're
and it
good.
took
We
and
our
and
own
it,
Department of War says that they're democratic.
if we promise
Senator Vela.
Okay, so which plan prolongs the civil war?
Your plan?
If your plan,
I give you
if you're
a strategic military plan that if we can fortify the Kurdish supply lines that gives them enough time to march on the capital and win the war.
we need
That's
to
the
still
best military
fortify their
analysis
land.
that has gone through this
If we
round.
need to fortify their positions, they have less land and they have overall less land and how are they
Like I just
prolonging
disagree.
this?
Question period's
I
now elapsed,
fundamentally
but the
disagree
speaker
with
and the questioner may be muted. I just want to remind everyone again to please not like speak over the questioning time and speak over other people because I can't like no one can hear you for speaking over someone in a virtual Zoom meeting. Okay, the chair now calls for any and all speakers on the Star and Moon plan. Senator Gullapali.
Hey everyone, that's Senator Gullapalli, and I promise what I'm about to say next, I didn't choose to say it. Yo, Medina apps rolling in. This is Senator Gullapalli, once again representing Medina apps, spelled Gullapalli. Just a sign of readiness for my judges, and I'll begin. Ready. All right, I'm just going to assume silence is an indication that everyone else is ready. Please time me on my first word. I think as a member of this Congress, we should know what the red and the white on the American flag means. Contrary to the experts, I think it represents candy canes. Just add sugar and some red 40 and voila. But in Turkey, red and white means something entirely different. There, children don't use sugar for candy, but as an adhesive for bombs. Bombs that explode in fiery red, ripping apart streets that were supposed to be homes. The Department of War Intelligence brief confirms Istanbul is already so devastated that satellite imagery estimates over 100,000 people dead. Has the Sun and Moon bill to stabilize global trade and prevent a wider war that your constituents would ultimately have to pay for? 3 cycles into this debate, it's concerning how far we've drifted off from what we're actually about. So let me bring us back to why we're even here today in the first place. I don't think we're actually here to choose sides. I think we're here to choose stability for the people of Turkey and more importantly, for the people of the United States. Turkey is a trillion-dollar economy and a major US trade partner. As a basic principle of foreign policy economics, stabilizing Turkey protects American jobs and markets, while funding non-state armed groups offers no trade, revenue, or long-term return. I think the most important thing we should be focusing on is our constituents and the things that they benefit from. But then Senators Yan and Tuli both say we should value the attempt for democracy above all. Now, I would totally agree with you if it weren't for the fact that the Department of War briefing literally told you that the Republican Guard is already outnumbered, taking heavy losses, and only surviving because the Kurdish insurgency is propping them up. And on top of that, the Six Arrows plan asks us to back two different armed groups and split the country apart, while there is still a war raging on. That's not how you build democracy. That's how you worsen the already ongoing civil war. You don't write constitutions under siege. You don't hold elections while cities are burning down. When you back competing governments in the middle of a war, you delay peace and tear apart the very institutions democracy depends on. I'd argue if you really want democracy, end the war faster and then oust the autocracy using leverage that we have when you pass the Star and Moon bill. I want to make this very loud and very clear. War is never a good thing, but a faster end means fewer civilians dead, fewer refugees displaced, and fewer American troops sent back later to clean up the bloodshed. You have to weigh the impacts. Our side wins on every ground imaginable. I want you to remember who chose you to be here. It was your constituents. Pass the Star and Moon bill for them. Thank you.
Speech time 3 minutes 13 seconds. Once again, 3 minutes 13 seconds. Questioners rise. Between Senators Yan, Tuli, and Patel, that will first go to Senator Tuli.
Hey, Senator.
If the two Democratic insurgency groups are holding their own without our support, why wouldn't sending 30,000 troops and billions of dollars finally give them the resources they need to win the war?
So I just think that it would be way faster to help the Turkish government. I'm not saying that democracy is like not necessary.
Why is that inherently like a good thing though? They're oppressing the Turkish minority. Like
yeah,
the Kurdish
can I
minority.
finish? I think democracy comes faster when you actually finish the war faster and have less casualties, as I proved to you in my speech.
So one of your main reasons for the Star and Moon is protecting U.S. trade and economic stability, correct?
Yes, because it's a benefit for your constituents.
Okay, short answers. If over 100,000 civilians are already dead in Istanbul, how does escalating this urban warfare protect either lives or long-term trade?
Regardless of whether you choose the Star and Moon or the Six Arrows, you're still escalating the conflict. I'd say when you pass, can I finish? I'd say when you pass the Star and Moon, you finish the conflict faster, as I proved to you in my speech.
So you're saying economic stability
is now allowed, but the speaker and the questioner may be muted. Given that was the speech in the Star and Moon plan, Six Arrow plan speakers, please rise. Senator Goparaju unopposed.
I thank the chair. Hey everyone, this is Senator Goparaju speaking for the first time this session. I still can't see my judges, so I'm just going to take silence as the indication to begin. Give me a holler if you're not ready. In 2016, while defending a proposal to expand executive power in Turkey, President Erdogan offered an example of what he considered an effective system of government. That example was Hitler's Germany. Sit with that for a moment. The president of Turkey literally looked at one of the most brutal regimes in human history and said, "This works." Not as a warning, not as a mistake, but as a model. And when that's the mindset guiding state power, the problem isn't strategy or alliances. It's what happens to human lives when control matters more than its consequence. Pass the Six Arrows plan. Now, so far, the advocacy for the Star and Moon plan has sidelined human lives and focused on the fact that a lack of Turkey and NATO would cripple the organization and risk stability. First of all, I'd argue that Turkey leaving NATO is a good thing. Here's why. The Guardian 2023 shows us that Turkey wants to deny NATO any action that is not in concert with their objectives at the UN, essentially paralyzing NATO. Turkey leaving NATO helps the organization, not hurts it. Here's why. Time and time again, Turkey has prioritized themselves over anything else in NATO, essentially slowing them down and halting them in various situations. In various situations that involves Russia, involves any of their allies, they decided not to act, not to help NATO out, and just watch or halt them altogether. They do way more harm than good. They are biased. They don't support democracy, and all they do is slow down the organization. So under this bill, worst case scenario, Turkey leaves and they don't come back. That's a good thing. NATO is held and we run smoother and faster. But when you pass a 6-arrow plan and show Turkey that we don't support them, we ensure that this conflict stops as soon as possible. According to the latest Department of War report, they say that the Turkish armed strength is around 280,000 active members, while the Kurdish insurgency and Republican Guard have a total of 675,000. Senator Tuli on my side said the Kurdish would lose the war without us. That is uncategorically untrue. They have almost double the soldiers as Turkey. Sure, they might be in a losing position right now, but there is no chance that they actually lose this war. Turkey knows that they can't win this war without us. They're just completely outmatched and getting beat on both sides. So when we openly support their stronger opposition and provide humanitarian aid, we allow the least casualties. One, we're providing humanitarian aid, obviously less casualties. But two, Turkey will have no choice but to engage in peace talks because they will know that they cannot win this war. Senator Gullapali, Turkey loses this war without us, and we stop the conflict as soon as possible. Not through sheer force, but through peace talks. So when you pass, you ensure that this war ends as fast as possible, saving the most lives as possible. That is priority number one, Senator Vela. But next, Senator Gullapali wants to base his advocacy on Erdogan leaving, saying that we allow democracy in Turkey. First of all, Senator, do we really trust this guy? And second of all, even if we do, we're not getting rid of stability. The New York Times in 2025 shows us that the Turkish government has
3 minutes, 15 seconds. Once again, 3 minutes, 15 seconds. Questioners rise. Senator He unopposed. Oh, sorry. Senator Yoffe and Vela just stood up. Between Senators He, Yoffe, and Vela, that will first go to Senator He.
Greece, Bulgaria, and Turkey have all left NATO, and that's shut down trade. Are you saying that that trade is worth sacrificing because Turkey was a little bit slow in previous dealings?
First of all, NATO isn't a trade organization, right? We can do separate trade deals on this.
But it is a
NATO is
like
a
it
military
is a mechanism that's improving people's
Find
economies.
another one. I'm not gonna have trade in a military deal be the rationale for hurting human lives.
Okay, so countries are like their economies are crashing because of Turkey leaving, but we're saying that's
We can
okay.
do trade deals on the side. This is a military organization for
Wait, but that is still a factor.
Sure, then find another way to trade deal, right? This is a military organization.
Senator, you said that Turkey has no chance of winning this war, right?
Yeah.
So when the Department of War tells us that Turkey has state-of-the-art military-grade technology that the other side just doesn't have, do their numbers even matter?
Yeah, so when we give a superior military with more people, our military force.
Right, so our military is the deciding factor. You said that it's not. You said that it doesn't matter if we join or not.
So right now, this war is like kind of even, right? Turkey has a higher military, but insurgent forces just have so many more people.
Your questioning period now elapsed, but the speaker and the questioner may be muted. Given that was a speech given that's a speech for the 6-arrow plan, Star and Moon speakers, please rise. The chair calls for Senator He unopposed.
That's Senator He speaking for the third Star and Moon speech. If my judges could just give me a thumbs up when they're ready. I know PO is always great. It is cool. Great. America's power has never come from its weapons. We've built our legacy on principles, freedoms, and rights. But when right now at this moment, millions in Turkey are suffering from earthquakes to civil wars, more children starve, and more children are displaced, pass the Star and Moon plan and stop the bleeding. Now, I just want to clarify the entire situation. Simply put, it's insane. The Department of War literally told us that Turkey is about to collapse from a civil war, and civilians are suffering from a 7.7 magnitude earthquake with no aid. But then, it gets even worse. NATO is breaking apart, and Ukraine depends on this. But with all of that being said, I think everyone can agree on two things. One, peace is good, and two, whichever side we support will take over Turkey. That brings me to the one question in this debate. which side ruling over Turkey will bring the most peace for everyone? To prove that the Star and Moon plan is the best side for peace, I want to analyze 3 areas: NATO, Ukraine, and Turkey. Let's start with NATO. Senator Goparaju says it's better if Turkey is gone, but that's not what the UN Secretary General Mark Rutte tells us. He tells us NATO is falling apart because Greece, Bulgaria, and Turkey are all leaving, collapsing parts of Europe's economy and stability. But it doesn't have to be that way, because Erdogan in his letter said that those 3 countries would rejoin NATO. But second, that brings me to Ukraine. The Center for Strategic International Studies on December 5th of 2025 found that Ukraine has been pushed back around 15 kilometers by Russian forces because NATO countries have been suffering economically. A stronger NATO means a stronger Ukraine. But Senator Dubinak is right when she tells us that Erdogan might let Russian fleets in. I think that still happens when uncoordinated rebels without any diplomats are trying to repair a country. They can't protect the Bosphorus Strait at the same time. But either way, whoever we help, we use the leverage of them winning a war to not agree with Putin. I don't think Putin has any more leverage than saving an entire country. If Erdogan has already agreed to rejoin NATO if we help them, I think he would continue to reject Putin. Ukraine stays strong. But third, what about Turkey? Senator Yen is right when she tells you that Erdogan has been a dictator, but supporting him guarantees he can't be anymore. 2 reasons why. 1. Erdogan knows that if he does a really bad job like right now, civil wars will continue to happen for any dictator or any regime. That's unsustainable. But second, Senator Goparaju says Erdogan is really bad. Erdogan himself in his own letter said he would resign. Who's his replacement? The American Enterprise Institute on April 26 of 2023 found that President Erdogan's replacement is Foreign Minister Hakan Fidan, who is exponentially better at foreign diplomacy. He holds his promises, meaning we're not dealing with a dictator, we're dealing with a professional. Senator Tuli, if you're so concerned about oppression, we have the tools to solve that. But I think that only happens when you stop the conflict right now, pass the Star and Moon plan, and look towards peace.
Speech time 3 minutes 14 seconds. Once again, 3 minutes and 14 seconds. Questioners rise. Between Senators Yan, Tuli, and Goparaju, that will first go to Senator Tuli.
Hey, wouldn't the $10 billion that we give them and 30,000 troops help protect the strait so Ukraine can stay strong?
I think if US troops are going to protect the strait either way, that doesn't need a 6 arrows plan.
Okay, wait. You said specifically that the rebels won't be able to protect the strait. Why won't our allocations under the 6 arrows plan allow them to
allocate troops either way, regardless of who we help? I'm telling you that the 6 arrows plan as a whole is a bad idea.
Why specifically?
Because
Okay, so you said Erdogan's replacement is better at foreign diplomacy, right?
And he's better also with policies within the country.
Wait, how though? He's from the same party, so would he not have the same ideologies between what Erdogan is doing?
No.
Okay, so Erdogan has removed all of his actual political opponents, right? So the only people who can get power are people that align with his views.
Erdogan has more expertise. Like he's the only reason he's not like
the same ideology that will still continue to oppress the same people.
Like they can't keep oppressing if they know revolutions will happen.
The questioner may be seated, maybe muted. Given that was a speech given that's a speech for the Star and Moon plan, 6 arrow speakers rise. Once again, the chair calls for any and all 6 arrow speakers.
Motion.
State that.
1 minute in house recess.
Are there any seconds? Any opposed? Seeing none, we're now in a 1 minute in-house recess.
We had like a lot of 6 arrow speeches. Is there anyone who can go right now? Because I think that like even breaking cycle would be a problem because I don't even know if we have moon speeches.
Okay, who has their 6 arrows speech already done? Like it's written.
I can go.
Motion and recess early.
You can't motion in or recess. You just have to wait for it to elapse.
I don't think. Okay,
that's not true. That is not true.
Yeah, you end it prematurely.
I'm pretty sure you can motion to end it early.
Yep, you can end it. You can end it early.
Are there any motions?
Motion to end the recess prematurely.
Are there any seconds? More importantly, any opposed? Seeing none, we're now ending the recess. Okay. Are there any speakers for? All right. Given that that we just had a speech in the Star and Moon plan, are there any speakers for the 6 Arrows plan? Seeing none, the chair highly frowns upon. Oh, Senator Dubinak unopposed.
Thank you, Chair. My name is Representative Dudinik. Dudinik. Judges, please give me a sign when you're ready.
So this is for the rebels, right?
Yeah.
Thanks.
Senator Vela and Gullapali just stood here and told you that the Star and Moon plan brings stability. That is a lie. There is no stability in a plan that creates a forever war against 500,000 Kurds, and there is no stability in handing the Black Sea to Vladimir Putin. Check the date on your phones. It's December 28th. According to the intelligence report in front of you, right here at this moment, Vladimir Putin is sitting down with the President Erdogan in Georgia. No, they aren't celebrating New Year's early. They're negotiating the end of Ukraine. Representative Goparaju stood here and told us that Ukraine will stay strong under the Star and Moon plan. With all due respect, this is a fantasy. Representatives, look at page 3 of the presidential memo. It explicitly warns us that President Erdogan is meeting with Putin today. It says if Erdogan wins, it is extremely likely that he will allow Russian warships to pass through the Bosphorus Strait. If we follow Representative Gopaраju's plan, we're not strengthening Ukraine. Senators, I was born in Ukraine. I know exactly what Putin is asking for. He wants to Bosphorus Strait. He wants to move the warships through Istanbul to crush the country I came from. If we pass the Star and Moon plan, we keep Erdogan in power and we hand those powers to Putin. I refuse to sign that into action. Putin is seeking to supplant the Russian Navy Black Sea presence with military of other Russian naval fleets. In doing so, however, requires the passage of the Bosphorus Strait. If Istanbul and Bosphorus fails into the hands of Turkish army, it is extremely likely that passage of the Russian naval army will be allowed. In short, Erdogan controls the Bosphorus Strait. If we pass the Star and Moon plan, the report itself confirms he will likely allow the Russian fleets to pass. If the Russian Navy enters the Black Sea, the Ukraine breaks and Kiev falls. The Star and Moon plan is the direct endorsement of Russian victory in Ukraine. The 6 Arrows plan, on the other hand, put the Republican Guard in control of the straits, blocking Russia and securing European stability. The Star and Moon plan demands for unconditional surrender of all rebels' colleagues. Do you know how math works? The intelligence report on page 2 confirms the Kurdish insurgency has 510,000 active members. They have fought for decades for a home. They will never surrender. Representatives, I urge you to pass the 6 Arrows plan. Thank you.
Speech time 2 minutes 45 seconds. Once again, 2 minutes 45 seconds. Questioners rise. Senator Vela unopposed.
So if President Erdogan literally said to us, if we help Turkey, they will be in debt to us, how is that not leverage that the U.S. has to impose reform on Turkey?
Because we allow President Erdogan to consolidate their power and
How? Because he literally says, if the U.S. helps, that is debt to us. So if we have that leverage, can we just do whatever he wants? And because he will be in debt to us, have to listen?
Your questioning period's now elapsed. We do still have one more block of questioning. Senator Vela, would you like to continue your block? Senator Vela.
I'm good.
Okay. Are there any other questioners? Seeing none, the chair absorbs that remaining block. Given us a speech in the affirmative for the 6 Arrows plan, are there any speakers for the Star and Moon plan? Star and Moon plan speakers rise.
I'm going to use the restroom, so within that time, I hope you guys figure this out. One sec.
Are there any motions on the floor?
Motion.
Senator Inamdar?
Indefinite recess till our judge comes back.
Well, we have to do that. So, seeing that our judge is back, are there any motions? Are there any motions? I mean, sorry, see, Senator Yen,
To end the recess.
are there any seconds? Are there any opposed? Seeing none, the recess is now ended. Given us a speech in the affirmative for the Six Arrows plan, are there any speakers in the affirmative for the Star and Moon plan? Senator Inamdar.
Yo, Medina apps rolling in. This is Senator Inamdar, Inamdar. I'm from the North Texas Longhorns District, so a big hook 'em horns, and I'll get started. 1, 2. All right, I'll just get started. I have a confession to make. Me and Senator He were the reason behind the invasion of Iraq. I told him, man, if we pass this legislation, we were going to destroy Iraq. He didn't listen to me then. But just before this round we had a discussion. And this time, I promise we're on the right side. Affirm this legislation to create stability in the Turkish region as a whole. So far in this debate, it's been split up into two areas. Number one, we have political stability, and then second, a threat of war with Russia. I want to dive into both of them and explain how this plan, the Star and Moon plan, is always going to be a better alternative. Senator Tuli, Yan, and Goparaju ask you to go with the Arrow plan to create political stability by going with a rebel group. When in history has supporting a rebel group ever went well? Yeah, never. But honestly, Senator Tuli and Goparaju, I just disagree with your premise of an argument that supporting this rebel group is going to be so much better, because Senator Vela on my side already told you that these insurgent groups are terrorists. Just let's understand that if we continue to support these terrorist groups and if they get into charge, it doesn't matter if they tell you they're going to run democratic elections. We can't trust them. It is always better for us to support and actually maintain an alliance with an actually established government. But moreover, if you affirm the Arrow plan, then the Kurds win. It means immediate military retaliatory action by Russia, Macedonia, Bulgaria, and Greece. But if Turkey wins, it means maybe military action from Russia trying to get the Baltic. This leads me to my second area of my speech, which is what happens if we enter a war with Russia. Now, very simply, I think the point of contention that everyone so far in this debate is missing is why is Turkey and NATO's relationship so important? Senator Goparaju tells you it doesn't matter. Senator He on my side told you that it is very imperative. But why? Because if Turkey rejoins NATO, it means a mutual defense treaty. This means that Turkey is going to have the protection of the entire force of NATO when you affirm my plan, the Star and Moon policy. So the real question going forward into this debate is who is going to be the best option to defend the Baltic Strait against Russia. Now, I don't want anyone to tell you, that, especially Senator Goparaju, that NATO isn't going to accept Turkey. Because understand Senator He's argument. NATO needs Turkey, Bulgaria, Macedonia, and Greece. But the threat of a full NATO has scared Russia in the past and will continue to do so in the future. The Atlantic Council in a July 2025 report found that the reason Putin hasn't dared invade a NATO country is because he's scared of the Mutual Defense Treaty. At the end of this debate, let me remind you what's at stake. Actual lives. You have the policy to change it.
Time 3 minutes 15 seconds. Once again, 3 minutes 15 seconds. Questioners rise. Between Senators Yan, Romero, and Goparaju, that will first go to Senator Romero.
Hey, who currently funds most of NATO's defense?
Us.
Yeah, the US. Isn't that the exact same military weapons and technology that we're going to be using to back the insurgents under this policy?
Under what policy?
Under the
Arrow
Six
plan?
Arrow policy.
Yeah, sure, I guess.
Okay, so if you're getting the exact same weapons you get under NATO, why can't we just give it to the six arrow plan and have more democratic elections, have a better
Like I
representation
told
of the
you, like
people
the
in the
full force
region?
of the Mutual Defense Treaty of NATO would be
Senator
significantly
Goparaju.
good.
Okay, so the Turkish government has been oppressing minorities for years, while the insurgent groups are just trying to be free. Who's a terrorist?
What?
The Turkish government has been oppressing minorities for years, while
I
the
mean,
insurgent groups
like I understand. Like I think everyone in this debate understands that the Turkish government isn't some saint, but right. But we
so
can't
why are
just
we
trust these organizations and expect them to be
okay, they're
democratic
trying to
because they
stop
said they're going to be
oppression. Why are
democratic.
they the terrorists?
What?
They're trying to stop oppression. Why are
Yeah,
they
because they commit like terrorist
Wait,
acts.
how? They're just fighting to be
Your
free and the
question
Turkish
They
period is
like
government
now.
bomb buses.
The
Like they do
speaker and the
terroristic
questioner may be
actions.
muted. Given now's a speech for the Star and Moon Plan, Six Arrow Plan, speakers rise. Between Senators Patel and Henson, that will first go to Senator Henson.
All right, hi everyone. I just want to make sure, can everyone hear me okay? Yeah, perfect. I'm just going to take a silence as an indicator of readiness, so I'll begin on my first word. Freedom, opportunity, and equality are three democratic principles that the U.S. stands for today. And right now, this Congress has a decision to make when it comes to upholding those very principles. And the Six Arrows Plan is the only plan here today that does exactly that. Now, first, this debate has boiled down to two sides, both plans trying to prove stability. But let me tell you why the Six Arrows Plan will always win in the long term. The affirmation on the Star and Moon Plan try to tell us that when you side with Six Arrows, we fracture NATO and invite instability. Yet Six Arrows will always win because history shows that when the US prioritizes short-term stability in the Middle East, it undermines NATO and destabilizes the region. That's a long-term impact we cannot afford, and the Six Arrows Plan is the only option that breaks this cycle. Every major U.S. intervention that chased short-term calm ended up producing long-term instability and weakened alliances. Looking to Iran in 1953 when the U.S. backed the Shah and it led to long-term revolutions, or in Iraq in the 1980s where it led to a long-term Gulf War and a NATO strain. The burden is on the Star and Moon to explain why repeating a failed strategy will magically work this time. The Six Arrows Plan is the first time the U.S. chooses long-term NATO help over short-term convenience. And the Six Arrows Plan chooses foreign policy that finally stops the U.S. from making the same short-sighted mistakes that have continued to weaken NATO for decades. Senator Goparaju already proved to you how Turkey leaving NATO is genuinely in NATO's best interests, but I still see Senator Hayes' concern with Bulgaria and Greece. While Greece and Bulgaria may temporarily distance themselves, their long-term security incentives overwhelmingly favor NATO reintegration. Bulgaria, for example, relies far more on U.S. security guarantees, intelligence sharing, and military assistance than the United States relies on them. So, once this conflict stabilizes, re-entry genuinely becomes the most rational choice for Bulgaria. So, and also, Senator Hayes' concern with the Bosphorus Strait is completely valid, but the Six Arrows Plan can literally solve that issue as we are literally putting U.S. troops and money to protect the strait that will literally secure it. But still, the biggest issue in today's round isn't just the stability of NATO, but it's also the impact that each plan has on Russia's advancements. The side winning this argument is always going to be the Six Arrows Plan because we can preserve long-term stability in the region. Representative Gullapalli, the Six Arrows Plan doesn't break Turkey apart, but instead it unites them under a fully democratic regime. The side that wins today's debate is the side that provides stability and ensures the prevention of Russian advancement in the Strait and Black Sea. So the moment we stop ensuring the protection of the Bosphorus Strait is the moment we solidify Ukraine's fate with Russia. Representative Inamdar, siding with the rebels is the only solution, as the European Center for Populism Studies in 2025 states that Turkey's public is largely adopting a democratic culture, and every senator on my side proved to you the rebels have the upper hand. Rebels aren't terrorists, they are people looking for the principles that we hold today in this Congress. Pass.
Speech
Six
time
arrows.
3 minutes 15 seconds. Once again, 3 minutes 15 seconds. Questioners rise. Between Senators Inamdar and he, that will first go to Senator Inamdar.
Hi, what is easier to make an established government, like especially one who's willing to like reform like democratic, or create an entirely new government?
I guess you're first.
Yeah,
Then,
right. So
yeah.
so that is what the Star and Moon policy is, right? We're getting
But
rid
what
of
I'm
President
saying
Erdogan and
is that it's
replacing
just
him with Senator He's alternative, right? This is a much better alternative for a democratic path.
But all I'm saying is right now we need to look past the short-term impacts and look more towards the
Yeah,
long
we're
term.
looking
Because
long
every
term,
time
right?
we're not though, because those short
Point of inquiry. Shouldn't that first question block have gone? Sorry, I thought you said the question block was over.
Wait, I'm
Did you say
confused. I
shouldn't
said
that first question block have gone to me?
I didn't see your hand raised.
Oh, my hand was raised the entire time.
Oh, well, unfortunate. All right, that goes to you now.
All right. So yeah, apologies. I thought that the question block was over. So, Representative Henson, I just proved to you in my speech that regardless, you and I can both agree that regardless in war there are casualties, right?
Yes, it's unavoidable.
Yes, so when I proved to you that we can end the war faster in my speech, causing less casualties, we can still achieve democracy. Isn't that like the way better alternative?
Well, all I'm saying is that I'm looking way past just that impact and I'm looking more so towards the long-term stability of NATO as well. And I'm saying that under the Six Arrows plan, that point always works.
Your
Yeah, but
question period is now allowed.
You're muted.
You're muted.
Given as a speech for the Six Arrows plan, Star and Moon speakers, please rise. Once again, Star and Moon speakers, please rise. Are there any motions on the floor? Senator Yen.
1 minute recess in house.
Are there any seconds? Are there any opposed? Seeing none, Chair unilaterally moves to a 1 minute in-house recess.
Okay, wait. Romero, Yoffe, Mendoza, and Patel. Do any of you guys have a Star and Moon?
I need about 2 minutes.
Anyone have a Star and Moon that can get done faster? The
I'm
judges will
going
probably reward
next
it.
on Six Arrows.
Okay, so
I have
then
Six Arrows.
I also don't have a problem extending half of it if it's really necessary and the judges want to.
well, I mean everyone should be ready. We've had like 50 minutes to prep a speech, so who's Mendoza? What do you have?
I have some stuff for Six Arrows. It is not put together just yet.
Okay, you're fine. We need a Star and Moon. Ian,
yeah.
Romero, what do you have?
I have a Six Arrows.
So if everyone has six
I'm
arrows,
giving the
I
neg six
shouldn't
arrows.
go next then. We should stagger because then we'll have 4 or 3 6 arrows in a row.
I mean, yeah, I mean, like whatever you guys want to do.
If we have 1 sun and moon and 4 6 arrows, we need to have another 6 arrows go. It's just unavoidable.
The 1 minute recess has elapsed. Are there any motions on the floor? Okay. Seeing none, we are now in line for a speech for the Star and Moon plan. Are there any speakers on the Star and Moon plan? Seeing none, the chair highly frowns upon a one-sided debate, but debate must go on. 6 arrow plan speakers rise. Senator Patel unopposed. Oh, between Senators Patel and Romero. That will first go to Senator Romero.
Hey everyone, Representative Romero speaking for the first time today. Romero, Romero. These are my PO and judges. I'm a PO already. It's my judges. Good. All right. Wonderful. The greatest victories weren't won through war. They've been won through peace. Gandhi secured India's independence not through escalation, but through nonviolence. Martin Luther King Jr. won civil rights not with weapons, but with marches and his speeches. History shows us the greatest battles are won with peace, not with war. For that reason, I'm asking you to pass the Six Arrows plan. Understand, under both bills, the Star and Moon and the Six Arrow plan, the war escalates to a certain extent. But I want to examine the short-term impacts and then the long-term impacts to prove why the Six Arrow plan is the far better plan. Get out of here with Senator Gullapali. The most important impact in this debate is which side decreases civilian casualties, because the answer is a Six Arrow plan. I'm asking you to pass this one. Let's look at the short term. Right now, according to the Department of War preliminary assessment, the fighting has already killed over 100 civilians in Istanbul alone, largely because of the indiscriminate shelling, urban warfare, and poorly controlled military operations. That civilian toll isn't accidental. It's a result of chaos, faulty weapons, and a lack of training on the insurgents' parts. But it's the Department of War that reports the Kurdish forces and Republican Guard are currently operating with unreliable weapons sourced through black markets, and they have limited training and they have fragmented intelligence. Even when these groups are trying to avoid civilians, poor targeting and malfunctioning weapons makes that near impossible. Mixed strikes hit homes. Improvised munitions hit crowds. But under the 6 Arrow plan, we give the insurgents better munitions, 30,000 American troops, weapons, and humanitarian aid. When we give the insurgents the proper tools, we decrease the casualties in the region we're seeing right now. Because we're actively committing to an attempt to decrease the regional casualties, I'm asking you to pass the 6 Arrow plan. But now, I want to look at the long term and prove to you why the 6 Arrow plan provides better political stability for the entire region as a whole. Senator Vela, Gullapali, he, and everyone else proposing this Star and Moon plan to restore order by force are using the same Turkish government whose lost legitimacy caused the conflict in the very first place. Stability they call for and hundreds call for doesn't survive as long as it should. It only survives as long as the repression does. Because repression is something we need to ultimately stop in the region. I'm asking you to pass the 6 Arrow plan. Because it's almost the same thing as we did in 1979 in Iran. Because force, we crushed it, and it seemed like order had been restored on paper. That's what the Star and Moon plan promises. But that didn't work. For the past 4 decades, Iran has been in turmoil. Past the Second Guard, which the Department of War identifies as committed to democratic governance and constitutional reforms, and by resolving the Kurdish statelessness for 34.5 to 40 million people, it builds legitimacy instead of fear. And it solves the Russian issue. A better government in Turkey, and they have more force through the Kurdish people, and they're angry right now. Senator we don't need a stronger NATO. We need a stronger Turkey to oppose Russia.
Speech time,
already done
3
in the
minutes,
past.
15 seconds. Once again, 3 minutes, 15 seconds. Questioners rise. Senator Yoffe, unopposed.
Senator, you said this would cause less casualties, right? Sorry, I can't hear the rest. I'm assuming he said yes. So when
in
we
the short term, because like right now, most of the civilian casualties are happening because the Kurds are unarmed.
Right.
Yeah.
So if we arm the Kurds, are we not going to try massacre both sides?
Hello. Both sides want to escalate the
Right.
conflict.
So if we
I'm
have,
telling you right now,
but
the Kurds are using faulty weapons. You give them better weapons, you decrease
I
casualties.
disagree. I think that if we give them better weapons, we're going to increase the casualties on both sides.
Senator Inamdar.
Civilian casualties will decrease because we're no longer targeting them.
What is more likely? What is like NATO threatening like Russia to stop the invasion, or like a rebel group doing that?
I'm telling you right now, the Kurds are already on unfavorable terms with Russia. They'll oppose Russia because they know they prefer other countries like Iran and Turkey, which are actively against. They'll do their best to get them out of the Bosphorus Strait.
But when Turkey joins with NATO,
Russia doesn't get access to the strait, and we fix the issue in Ukraine.
When Turkey rejoins with NATO, they have to face the full threat and the full force of NATO, right? And just Russia won't attack. I proved that to you in my
But the
speech.
speaker and the questioner may be muted. Given us a speech for the 6 Arrows plan, Star and Moon speakers, please rise. Senator Yoffe, unopposed.
I thank the chair. I'm just gonna face the camera again. Just do that. Plan on standing up here. Good morning, everybody. I woke up a bit sick, so I apologize if I start coughing mid-speech. Just sign of life for my judges. I'll begin. It's one. Mr. Choi, are we good? Hayne. Should make sure that my mic actually catches me. And Mr. Allstar, thank you, thank you. When NATO trembles and Europe faces chaos, the world looks to one nation to lead. That nation is the United States. The Star and Moon Plan empowers America to act decisively, to restore order in Turkey, and to secure our allies and prove that American resolve is the backbone of global stability. Now, it seems that every single person advocating for the Six Arrows plan has two things in common. One, they can't pronounce Erdogan's name. And two, they think that democracy and protecting the Bosphorus Strait is the most important part of today's issue. So let me explain why both of those fail under the Six Arrows plan. Senator Tuli, Jan, and Goparaju all state that the new democracy under the Six Arrows plan is the most key part of today's legislation. Let me take them at their highest ground and say that we do get a democracy. That still fails. Take Afghanistan in the past. It relied on the United States for 20 years after being a newly democratic formed nation. And yet, after 20 years, they collapsed instantly because democracies that are formed off of the US's support are not secure in the first place. They're the most fragile type of government that we can have. So when we take and we try to go and show that we are going to form a democracy, we are simply trying to back a nation that is doomed to fail from the start. Now, second, I don't know how this got muddled up throughout the entire debate, but all of the senators on my side have explained both in their speeches and cross how we control the Bosphorus Strait, even under the Star and Moon plan. But let me re-explain, since it seemed to have gotten lost somewhere in the round. The US troops are supporting Turkey in both plans. So if we have Turkey rejoin NATO under the Sun and Moon plan, we are indiscriminately putting US troops into Turkey, which not only lets us control the Bosphorus Strait, but incentivizes Turkey to oppose Russia in the first place, since NATO themselves tell us that their main mission is to oppose Russia. When we try and oppose Russia, and we have US troops that are in Turkey, we are ensuring that nobody is going to control the Bosphorus Strait besides the United States and NATO as a whole. Now, other senators on the other side have tried to frame this entire debate around whose lives will be saved. I disagree with senators on the Six Arrows plan. I believe that if we give weapons to the side that already has the most technologically advanced situation, we are ensuring that overall we are going to effectively make it so that no people under the Six Arrows plan, no civilians and no Kurds, are going to be able to run the civil war for longer than it has to be by adding troops and boosting technology against the side that has almost none, like the senators on the Six Arrows plan have advocated for. We are ensuring that this civil war is wrapped up in a less gruesome manner and in a way that we can actually act, if you like, to not have a long civil war, not have casualties, and support Ukraine, unlike what every single senator on the Six Arrows plan has said today. You support the Sun and Moon every single time.
Speech time, 3 minutes and 5 seconds exactly. Once again, 3 minutes, 5 seconds. Questioners rise. Between Senators Yan, Patel, and Goparaju, that will first go to Senator Patel.
Hey, Senator, is it better for the U.S. to be babysitting Turkey to make sure that they don't deal with Russia, or to establish a regime that we know isn't going to interact with Russia in that sense?
Okay, babysitting Turkey to establish Russia is going to be all of NATO's job, but if we literally have to send billions in foreign aid to establish a brand new democratic nation, I think that is constituting babysitting a little more.
There is a possibility of letting that democratic nation operate on its own terms afterwards.
Yeah, because we definitely saw that work in Afghanistan, right?
There's no proof.
There is proof. We saw it fail in Afghanistan. We've seen it fail everywhere in the world.
That's what we should let them do their own thing. That's the entire idea.
Hey, who's less likely to cooperate with Russia? The Kurds or this new Turkish government y'all want to put in under the Star and Moon plan?
The new Turkey government, because they have the U.S. backing.
Wouldn't the Kurds
NATO
also
backing.
have the U.S. backing that's not unique to either policy?
You're right, but under your plan, we ensure that we have a failing government.
The Kurds are already on unfavorable terms with Russia. They're anti-Russia in the first place.
Okay, great. And if we have a new leader that is supported by not only...
now elapsed, but the speaker and the questioner may be muted. Given that the speech for the Star and Moon plan, speakers for the Six Arrows plan, please rise. Between Senators Patel and Mendoza, that will first go to Senator Mendoza.
Sorry, motion, point of personal privilege, exit the chamber. I don't know if we're doing that here.
Granted.
Okay. Thank you, Chair. That is Senator Mendoza, Mendoza, rising to speak for the first time in this legislative session. I can't see all my judges, so I'm just going to assume they're ready. If you're not, give me a shout. And with that, we'll go ahead and get started. I'm glad we care, but you know who I think doesn't really care all that much? Turkey. Yeah, it's a little crazy to say. This entire emergency session is here to discuss Turkey, right? But I feel like they've shown a lot of lack of care. The Department of War tells us that Turkish forces have widely been very uh, neglectful of their own civilians during this. It says that they have acted without regard to their civilians in the fight, and this just layers on top of what everyone else on my side has said about them being a rather authoritative regime. So I don't want to hit on that. You'll also find that both sides continue to argue. It's like, oh, if we keep the Republic of Turkey, then Russia will go in the strait. But if we replace the Republic of Turkey, Russia's going to go in the strait. You know what? I don't want to argue about that because really we can't know what's going to happen. But both sides make a great point there. The reason I go with the six arrows plan is because we can't base things off this idea of stability that we really have no way to prove. I base it on the values that we hold and what we know as we hold as allies. Senator Vela builds his entire argument on this idea that changing the regime is detrimental to our stability. We could get something worse. But the Oval Office identifies those rebels as our allies. They say we align more closely with them despite what NATO is telling us. In contrast to what Senator Inamdar would say, supporting rebels isn't a bad thing. We were rebels. The Greeks were rebels. We were all rebels before we became countries. Senator, he promotes this idea that whenever our beloved President Erdogan resigns, Turkey, by the way, that we'll get someone better who more closely aligns with us, who has better diplomacy. But we cannot know that. Any great figure, the mayor of Istanbul, defense leaders, any of them could be the successor of President Erdogan. It isn't a set in stone. It isn't like they have a successor lined up. That isn't how the policy works. We are elected as congressmen and women. But a lot of us seem to think that we're elected as soothsayers and that we're elected as mind readers and we're supposed to be able to see the future, but we really can't. I hate to be that guy who's like, oh well, we can't do this because I don't know what's gonna happen because no one ever knows what's gonna happen. But I do know one thing is for certain, and it's I know the values we as the United States hold, and that's always our first priority is looking at what the United States values. We value that democracy. We value our allies. And again, the Oval Office sent to us, urging us to act in our interest. And they said, Turkey is not officially recognized as our ally, but you know who is? The Republican Guard, those Kurds. By doing this, we put years of unrest to rest. The issue of the Kurds is gone, and the issue of unrest is gone in Turkey because we finally valued our own power. Thank you.
Speech time, 3 minutes, 10 seconds. Questioners rise. Between Senators Yoffe and Vela, that will first go to Senator Vela.
If we put in a democracy before democratic reform, what happens?
If you put in a democracy before democratic reform, well, the democratic reform will come with these new people. They align with us, right?
How do we know that? Because if we put in a democracy before reform actually takes place, yeah, nothing changes because we can't prove it will, right?
Well, you can never prove that anything's going to happen, but our best bets with this.
That's why we put reform before the democracy is put in place. That is what the Star Moon proposes.
Your questioning period is now elapsed. Senator He.
Hi, good speech. So Erdogan said that he was stepped down because he realized his policies weren't that good. Isn't that evidence that even the current government is shifting towards a more democratic regime?
I wouldn't say that does inherently mean that the government's shifting towards a more democratic regime just because he steps down. My point is I love the idea that I agree with you, we could get a better leader. I'm saying I don't know what will happen, and there are just as worse leaders that could
But
step up
looking
and
at
take
like
his place.
stabilization plus like their own values, shouldn't we choose the one that's more stabilized if the values are pretty similar already?
Questioning period is now elapsed, but the speaker and the questioner may be muted.
Thank you, Chair.
Given that was a speech for the Six Arrows Plan, speakers and for the Star and Moon Plan, please rise. Senator Patel unopposed. Oh, sorry. Once again, the chair calls for any and all speakers for the Star and Moon Plan. Seeing none, the chair highly frowns upon a one-sided debate, but debate must go on. Any and all speakers for the Six Arrows Plan, please rise. Senator Patel.
Yo, this is Senator Patel rolling in from Medina Apps Institute. I'll give you like 10 seconds, and then if I don't hear a holler, I'll start.
This is another Rebels, right?
Yes. American patriotism is undoubtedly some of the most comedic yet deeply ingrained forms of national identity globally. We have competitions celebrating the amount of hot dogs eaten in 10 minutes. We have festivals filled with gluttonous snacks of fried Oreos and cheese. And every November, our president conducts a ceremony pardoning a Thanksgiving meal. But it's time for America to open its eyes from disillusionment and recognize we can no longer pardon Turkey. Pass the Six Arrows Plan. The largest question in today's debate has obviously been which side best promotes American ideals. And it couldn't be more obvious that Senator Vela's plan goes against everything America has stood for. And there are 3 reasons why. Number 1, America stood side by side with Ukraine, and we can't let this funding go to waste. Only the Six Arrows Plan restricts Russia without forcing another U.S. intrusion like Senator Yoffe wants. Setting up a democratic nation avoids another Afghanistan that was far too dependent on the U.S. and instead establishes a possibility for a real future. 2, NATO integrity doesn't depend on supporting an authoritarian regime that has intention to delay NATO processes. And we can easily establish NATO with these 2 new nations that actually agree with our ideals. It isn't falling apart, it simply is a renewal. Senator Inamdar, we can simply appease and pull Turkey's allies away, like giving Greece the islands they have been fighting the Turks for decades. And as long as the US sits as the cornerstone of NATO, NATO won't fall. And third, remember, like me and Senator Tuli have made it clear, Senator Vela wants democracy without elections. That's literally the exact opposite of what our founding fathers stood for. And Senator He, even if the foreign minister takes a chair, you must realize he's another seed from the same rotten plant. But on to what this round most desperately needs, some comparative weighing. On the Star and Moon's best crowns, they are funding a Turkish government in which there is undoubtedly a risk in the degradation of Turkey to an authoritarian regime. I will even concede that on the Six Arrows' best grounds, there's a chance of a weakened EU and NATO. But realize the latter is much more preferable. Economic downturns and recessions are temporary globally. Look to COVID. If we were able to beat a global pandemic that shut down our entire economy, it's clear that our economy is resilient and can respond to any type of factor. But we can look to the Middle East where the situation is much more dire. Syria and Afghanistan have reached a point of no return when encountering an authoritarian regime. The history speaks for itself. The Six Arrows Plan at worst has reversible impacts because at the end of the day, we must all agree that the economy is always temporary and there's room for improvement because we can create new trade agreements across the board and realize as well that NATO isn't even based on the economy. So even if these nations do suffer economically, they will never pull out of NATO because that is not what NATO is structured for. But on the other hand, the Stars and Moons Plan leaves Turks and Kurds alike staring into the night sky without any future in sight.
Speech time 3 minutes exactly. Once again, speech time 3 minutes. Questioners rise. Between Senators Inamdar, Mendoza, and Vela, that will first go to Senator Mendoza.
Senator, do you believe that implementing the Six Arrow Plan is going to put an end to the Kurdish issue that's been persisting for all this time?
Yes.
Do you think that is a permanent solution to the Kurdish issue?
Yeah.
Could you explain why, after getting this, they wouldn't just continue to push for more, how this isn't satisfactory to all their
needs? They have their own country. I don't know what else they would really want or push for if they have their own democratic nation, which they can establish their own ideals and operate independently.
All right, thank you.
Hi, I think you're missing the comparative here. It isn't about money, it's about Russia, right? Because I think in both worlds that Russia's going to try and get the Baltic straight. In one world, you have NATO protecting it. In the other, you have a bunch of rebels.
Well, these rebels wouldn't be rebels when they're actually a country. The U.S. was also rebels, but we're not considered rebels today.
It's not about like rebels or not rebels, right? It's about like who's protecting alongside. I think it is a much better alternative to have NATO
the U.S. to play
alongside.
babysitter.
What?
That's your alternative. The alternative is for the U.S. to play babysitter or establish 2 independent nations that can operate and
Dude, this is all short term. We're looking long term here.
just a reminder not to speak over people questioning. Okay, given that everyone has spoken at least once, are there any motions on the floor?
Motion.
Senator Inamdar.
Previous question.
Are there any seconds?
Second.
Any opposed? Seeing none, we're moving to previous question. So as standard NSBA procedures, it'll just be a simple majority. I'll call for all of those wishing to pass the Star and Moon plan, and then I'll call for all of those wishing to pass the Six Arrows plan. First, all of those wishing to pass the Star and Moon plan, please raise your hand. I count 1, Senator Yoffe, 2, Senator Vela, 3, Senator Inamdar, 4, Senator He. Yeah, okay. All those wishing to pass the Six Arrows plan. Count 1, Senator Mendoza, 2, Senator Yan, 3, Senator Goparaju, 4, Senator Henson, 5, Senator Patel, 6, Senator Tuli, and 7, Senator Romero. On a vote of 4 to 11, this bill. Wait, there should be 3 other people that did not vote. Okay, this including me. So 2 other people that didn't vote.
Yeah, can I address the PO real quick? I rose my hand for Stars and Moon. I'm not sure why you couldn't see it. Is that a problem on my part for everyone else? Like, could anyone else see my hand?
I saw it.
You saw it? All right.
My bad. So I'll just recount. Okay. So everyone wishing to pass the Star and Moon plan, just raise your virtual placard. I'll just wait for everyone. Okay. All right, I count 1, Senator Inamdar, 2, Senator Vela, 3, Senator Gullapali, and then 4, Senator He. Okay, that's 4. 5, Senator Yoffe. All those wishing to pass the Six Arrows plan, please raise your virtual placard. I count 1, Senator Tuli, 2, Senator Henson, 3, Senator Dubinak, 4, Senator Patel, 5, Senator Yan, 6, Senator Goparaju, 7, Senator Mendoza, and 8, Senator Romero. On a vote of 5 to 8, on a vote of 5 to 8, we are passing the Six Arrows plan. My congratulations to the author. Are there any motions on the floor?
Adjourn. I move to orders of the day and then to adjourn.
Are there any seconds?
Point of personal inquiry.
State that.
Are we having 2 separate sessions, like adjourning now? Okay, then
Hey, shouldn't we figure out who the PO is next session?
You can do that after we adjourn. Are there any seconds for those wanting to adjourn?
Second.
Are there any opposed? Seeing none, we are now adjourned. Really quickly, I'll just go over orders of the day. So we're a very efficient chamber. We got through 13 speeches. Everyone who wanted to speak spoke, and we got through 26 questions in total. Yeah, so we had a 5-way tie between the highest number of questioners, between Senator Tuli, Yoffe, Inamdar, Vela, and He. So everyone give it up for them. Yeah. I now adjourn.
Okay, before you guys go, we do have an update on the situation. Basically, a month has now passed since you guys have passed the Six Arrows plan. And we've just received word regarding the new situation from the president. He has sent us an update, which I'll be sharing in the chat now, and I'll also be sending in the folder that you guys already have access to. Following this, you'll receive several more documents in a couple of minutes, and then 2 pieces of legislation that you'll be doing dueling legislation on. These come with developments that we get with every minute. You'll see.
Are there any other motions at this point in time? All right. Seeing none, I'm just going to call for any first affirmatives on the 7-point plan.
Point of order. Can the first affirmative be an amendment speech?
It's not a point of order, but if you want to propose an amendment, you have to point of personal privilege
All right,
to
we'd have the
approach the
motion.
chair.
Oh,
Say that?
what? I didn't hear you.
What'd you say?
I didn't hear you.
Oh, if you want to establish amendment, you have to point of personal privilege to approach the chair with an
Mhm.
amendment, and then the parliamentarian will rule if it's germane or dilatory, and then we'll have debate, or we'll have introduce the amendment. We can previous question the debate on the amendment, and then we can pass the amendment. But first, we need to propose the first thing you appoint a person of privilege to approach the chair.
Okay, personal privilege to approach the chair.
Granted.
May I propose an amendment to the 7-point intervention bill?
Yeah, I just put it in the chat. I think it's
Okay.
the most easiest way to do here.
It's a link to a Word document, so it's gonna be a OneDrive. Let me get it again. Okay, I sent it in the chat.
Okay. And then just the parliamentary oath rule if it's germane or dilatory. If they
Call
rule
for
it
the
as
first
dilatory.
speech.
Say that again?
Call for the first speech and then I'll go over it. And
Oh,
then
okay, wonderful. Cool. While our parliamentary process of the amendment, I will once again call for the first affirmative on the 7-point plan. Once again, any first affirmatives?
Point of inquiry.
State that.
I believe the bill is like very unfavorable to anyone that wants to speak on it, which is why we're amending it in the first place. I don't think anyone really wants to speak first affirmative on the bill as it is. If the answer is no to that, like from the other people, then go ahead and speak on it first affirmative, but I'm not seeing anyone.
Okay. If you want, we
Motion.
can call for Representative Tuli.
Motion for a 1.5-minute in-house recess.
Any seconds to that? Wonderful. The amendment has passed.
Like,
That
guys,
recess
this
is
this bill is
officially in
not
session.
this bill is like not that bad. Like, you guys can speak on it. Like, it's a
The
solid
bill to go to full war with Russia isn't that bad.
Like, yeah, like you can speak on it.
Then
Like,
speak on it.
I have a speech prepped like with the original bill.
Then give it.
No, I gave the first early round last round, and I also don't have it ready yet. So someone else can step up.
Okay, I'm going on the other bill. I'm just saying.
okay, I'm just gonna rule it's germane. So if we want to just pass the amendment first so that we can get the first speech going, that's fine.
Cool.
Okay, motion.
State the Representative Tuli.
Motion to end the in-house recess early.
Any seconds to that? Okay. The recess is officially elapsed. The recess has been ended prematurely. Seeing as I probably wrote it as germane, we will now move into a speech to
Point
propose
of
the
inquiry
amendment.
real quick.
State
I
that.
don't mind if we pass the amendment, but is it true, like, don't you need a sponsorship on the original bill before you do any amendments? Like, we can suspend that rule, I don't care, but like, isn't that how it works?
I'm not 1000% certain, but I think that might be how it's supposed to happen.
The only thing that NSDA rules says
Motion.
about that is that it's supposed to be
This is out of
between
order.
speeches.
Motion for a 1-minute in-house recess.
Any seconds? Representative, we're now in a 1-minute in-house recess.
Yeah, the only thing NSDA rules says about needing a sponsorship speech is that it's supposed to be between floor speeches that the party reviews.
Okay, so I'm pretty sure NSA does not have a rule on this because I don't think there's a single scenario in which this really happens in a regular round. I'm just going to say, since there was a motion to amend and I already ruled that germane, if you guys motion to amend now, you guys can just amend it first and then debate as it is because we technically haven't even like started it because we haven't like had like a first speech yet and then it was just like a motion to amend.
Wonderful.
Motion.
Representative Tuli.
Motion to end in-house recess early.
Okay, that's granted. Seeing as the party ruled the amendment as germane, we will now move into debate on the amendment. We will now have Senator Jansen. She proposed the amendment. She will author or propose the amendment, and we'll have someone. Can everyone can see the amendment, correct? Okay. Senator Yan will propose the amendment, and then we'll have someone on the negative, or we can simply just previous question the entire debate. We can just vote on the amendment in itself.
Okay, so are we going to do the amendment speech
Senator
now?
Yan.
Yes, okay. My name is Senator Yan. Spelled
Yeah.
Y-A-N. Can you guys hear me? I'm on a different
Just
laptop.
for clarification, this is to speak on the amendment, not on the amended bill. If you want to like, because I'm assuming you're
Speak
just
on the
trying.
amendment, yeah.
I know, but I'm saying like I'm assuming she's just going to amend the bill and then debate the bill as is like it is in
Yeah.
its amended form. So the best thing to do would just be to like move to previous question on the debate on the amendment. Like, because I feel like you're about to give your speech and you wouldn't give your speech on the amendment. You would give your speech on the amended bill.
No, I'm giving my speech on the amendment.
Okay, then never mind. My apologies.
I'd like to propose the amendment.
Yes. Okay, so can you guys hear me? My Wi-Fi is a little bad. You can hear me? Okay. Parley, PO, judges, and PO, let me know when you're ready.
Sorry, just to clarify, just a second. This is an amendment on which bill? On 7-point or Turkish stability?
7-point.
7-point. Okay.
7-point.
All right. Thanks.
Yep. Everyone ready? Okay. Today's debate is not about whether Russia is a threat. This debate is about whether our response can actually limit dangers or not. A month after 6 Arrows passed, the Turkish government is falling apart. Russian forces are pushing towards the Bosphorus, and our allies are divided, while even our own briefing says that control is limited. The 7-point intervention plan is reckless as written, but it can become viable if it's properly amended. First of all, Section 1AII is amended to remove all assassination authority targeting Russian officials. The existing language authorizing capture or covert assassination is deleted in its entirety. It is replaced with language authorizing only the capture and extraction of high-ranking Russian officials for international prosecution. Second, Section 1B3 is amended to remove authorization for broad offensive strikes against Russian forces. The current language permitting precision offensive strikes under Operation Red Trident is going to be deleted, and it is replaced with language authorizing military engagement only for the defense of Istanbul, the Bosphorus Strait, or United States and allied personnel, with all preemptive or retaliatory strikes beyond those objectives explicitly prohibited. Third, Section 1BV is struck in its entirety. All language authorizing the relocation of American troops from Europe into Ukraine for training or combat support is removed without replacement. Fourth, Section 3 is amended to restrict the scope of troop deployment within Turkey. The existing unrestricted deployment authority is replaced with language limiting missions to defensive operations surrounding Istanbul, the Bosphorus Strait, humanitarian corridors, and evacuation protection. These amendments matter because the original bill assumes that escalation will create control. NATO has collapsed, and we still don't have a clear picture of what's happening on the ground. When Congress authorizes maximum force under those conditions, escalation becomes the very thing that we cannot have. Assassination authority is in the original bill, all but guarantees that Russia will respond directly. Replacing assassination with capture keeps pressure on them without forcing the situation to blow up. If strikes have no limits, then deterrence just turns into open fighting, which will lead to a much bigger American-Russian war. By limiting fighting to the Bosphorus, we block what Russia wants without dragging the war outwards into Europe. Cutting the Ukraine troop move keeps this conflict from spreading into a completely separate war that we do not need. Limiting troop missions keeps us from drifting into a bigger war while still protecting civilians in key areas. Before amendment, the 7-point plan risks a direct United States-Russian confrontation. After amendment, the plan stops Russia from gaining leverage while keeping our options open and avoiding damage that we cannot undo. We choose war or we choose prevention. I, for one, will choose prevention. If Russia controls the Bosphorus, Ukraine suffers and the war widens significantly. If the United States escalates recklessly, the conflict becomes far harder to contain or reverse. My amendments reduce both risks at the same time, and that is why this chamber should adopt my amendments. This is how we choose prevention over catastrophe. Thank you.
Thank you for that speech on the amendment. We are now open to question on the amendment. Are there any questions? President Inamdar, is that a questioning block?
Yeah.
You have between Inamdar and he. That'll first go to Representative He.
Okay, just to clarify, when you remove like the ability to assassinate, that's only for the Russian officials?
Yes. What it does, we all know that Russian officials are on Turkey land right now. What that does is we only
Happens
have
to like Erdogan, right? In Section 1AI. What about the
Erdogan.
Turkish officials? Yeah.
No, not Turkish officials, only on Russians who are on Turkish land
Turkish
or
officials can still be assassinated under the 7-point intervention plan.
well, if it's for just reason, then so, yes.
Inamdar.
Hi, why are we taking out the American soldiers being stationed in Ukraine?
As I've said already, when we take out, actually, when we stop the move from our troops to Ukraine, when we move our troops to Ukraine, what
So
will happen will it will
regardless of the legislation we pass, like we already know that Russia is going to advance on Ukraine. Why aren't we putting like people there proactively to protect against that?
they're going to advance on Ukraine through the Bosphorus Strait if that's what happens. We need to stop, but what
Yeah,
we
so
cannot, the thing
in that
let me
scenario,
let me
if they get
finish.
through,
The thing we need right
The
now the
block has
most is
elapsed. Seeing how it's speech on the amendment is only in line for 2 blocks of questioning, we're not going to ask for any negative speakers on the amendment. Anyone who wishes to oppose
point of
the
order.
amendment. State that.
The first speech and the second speech on the amendment has 4 questioning blocks.
I apologize. Are there any further questioners on that? Once again, calling for any further questioners. Seeing none, the chair will observe the remaining questioning blocks.
Motion.
Representative Inamdar.
Previous question on this amendment.
Any seconds to that?
second.
Okay. Is that a majority? Anyone opposed to moving the previous question? Seeing none, you assume unanimous consent. We now move to the previous question on the amendment. Seeing as an amendment, we need a 2/3 vote to pass the amendment. I will now call for those who wish to pass the amendment to please raise your platform and lower it when I call your name, or raise your digital hand in Zoom. 1 He, 2 Henson, 3 Sasha, 4 Vela, 5 Arjun, 6 Yoffe, 7 Mendoza. That is eight. 8 is a 2/3 majority as we are a chamber of 13 people. We are a chamber of 14 people, excluding myself. We currently only have 8 people voting to pass the amendment. That's not a 2/3 majority. I'm once again going to call for anyone who wishes to pass the amendment. Please raise your placard. And there's only 8 people. 9. Seeing as we are a chamber of 14 people, a 2/3 majority is 9 people. That is 2/3 majority. The amendment has officially passed.
Point of order, shouldn't 2/3 be 10?
2/3 is
You only need a simple majority plus 1 for an amendment to move to previous question.
we already previous question. We're asking to see if we're looking to see if we pass the amendment or not.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, considering because out of speakers, it's 9 people. But if we don't do the entire chamber, including the PO, then it would be 10 people.
Point of privilege. Wouldn't the PO abstain or not?
I just do 2/3. Yeah. Okay, I'm just gonna still have to only had 9 people vote to pass the amendment. The amendment, isn't it 2/3?
No, previous question is a 2/3 majority for an amendment to pass is the same thing as like a bill passing. It's simple majority plus 1.
Oh, I see. Then that is a simple majority. The amendment has officially passed.
Point of personal privilege.
State the Representative Inamdar.
Approach the chair with an amendment.
Send it in the chat. Yeah.
Yeah, I sent it. Does everyone see it?
All right, cool.
Does everyone see it or? Oh, shoot.
Send it again.
No. There you go. Everyone sees it now. Either probably will now rule if it's germane or dilatory. On this amendment, I'll preferably just move to the previous question and skip the debate altogether.
I wanted to speak on the amendment, so.
Oh, okay. You got it.
And then I think there's a neg speech on this amendment too. So,
Sorry,
we'll
point of
decide.
privilege.
State that.
Wouldn't his amendment have to be on my amended bill? Because I see
depends on
his
what he's
amendment.
amending. What are
his
you
amendment-
amending to?
Senator Inamdar's amendment is on the original bill, I believe.
Yeah, so I took all of your amendments and then struck them
out of order. We need a recess. Motion.
Representative
Looking for a 1 minute in-house recess.
Any seconds? You're now in a 1 minute in-house recess.
So, Senator Yan, to your question, I didn't mess with your amendment. So I took out all the things that you added and then re-added the sections and then re-amended it.
Okay, that makes sense.
So you're amending to her amended version, right?
Of course, yeah. But it's
Okay.
like more similar to the original. But yeah.
So everything she amended, you
Okay,
just got rid of.
I'm just going to propose that we already start because the issue in the first place was that we couldn't get a sponsor because no one wanted to speak on the original piece of like legislation. But now that it's been amended, we should have people who are willing to speak on it, and then we'll go through the amendment process after we've actually started a debate on the bill.
Wonderful. Okay, I'm gonna call for anyone who wants to speak
Motion.
on Representative Tuli.
Motion to end the in-house recess prematurely.
The recess is already officially elapsed. I
Okay.
apologize. Yeah. I'm not gonna call for any all people who wish to speak on the 7-point plan. We do need someone to speak on the 7-point plan to begin debate.
Point of personal privilege, address the chamber.
That's not a legitimate motion. Prefer if you called for a recess. Or I'd rather just move on to debate entirely because we've been wasting time and we've already been 21 minutes into our session. I'm going to call for anyone who wants to speak on the 7-point plan. Please rise. President Gullapali, is that a speech?
Motion. This is a motion.
State that.
Motion for a 1 minute in-house recess because we need a sponsor to start.
Are there any seconds to that?
Second.
President Inamdar, second. That does pass. Okay. We're now in a 1 minute in-house recess.
Yo, my amendment speech is like encompassing of a sponsor, so I can do
Hey,
both.
Ariz, I have a question.
Hey, we're in
Yeah.
an indefinite recess, by the way.
Your
Oh, yeah.
your
David.
on your doc, you still have the sections that have now been crossed out because we have adopted Representative Yan's amendment. So, do you want me just to ignore them and then also add in her parts?
No, do not add in her parts. Like this would be the new legislation going forward.
So you want to basically strike her amendment.
Yeah.
Okay, so I'm gonna have to determine this not to be germane because it is now changing the amended legislation because the amended legislation is what we adopted already. Like the amendment passed, so this is like changing it.
All right, I'll fix the amendment then.
Okay.
Okay,
Okay,
Judge Hayne told us to be ready by the time he
yeah.
comes back. What are we gonna do?
Yeah, we need a sponsor.
Let
Someone
me fix this
speak on-
amendment and
So
then
we
Yeah,
either
fine,
need
fine.
your amendment speech or we need or a sponsor on the already amended bill.
Yeah.
Do we have a speech for the other bill? Like a first?
Yeah, I have a sponsorship for the Stability Act.
Do you want to give a like a
No,
quick
we
7-point
need
plan?
to start with 7-point.
I planned on going
Yeah, but
later on
like
for Turkish stability.
yeah, after like the sponsorship or like amendment, I can go right after.
Okay, fine.
How many people do we have going on the Stability Act? That's the real question.
I mean, can we take
We only
speaks
have
again?
3.
Yeah, that's what I
From,
figured.
like,
We would
the
only have
first
3
splits.
and then 11 on the other side.
Is our Judge Hayne back? Because until he's back, the recess is still running.
He's back.
Judge
He's
Hayne,
back.
yeah.
Cool. Wonderful. All right, I'm once again call for any all sponsors on these 7 points. Senator Tuli, is that a motion?
1 minute in-house recess so you have Representative Inamdar enough time to make an amendment.
Okay. Any seconds to that recess?
second.
Okay. We're now in line for a 1 minute in-house recess.
All right, I got it done.
Are you planning on giving a speech on this?
Yeah. All right, I've fixed everything. It's the same. All the stuff is hers.
We're still amending?
Yeah.
There's no way.
So all the stuff that Senator Yan put in,
They proposed a secondary amendment. You're out of order. Call for recess.
okay, Point of personal privilege.
State that.
Approach the chair with an amendment.
Okay, that's
And that is the
granted.
amendment that I can mention.
Okay, cool. And then the charge have to remain if it's germane or dilatory.
Yeah, this is germane.
Okay, cool. We're not gonna move to debate on the amendment. Does anyone wish to sponsor this amendment? Resident Inamdar unopposed.
Hi, good afternoon, everyone. This is Senator Inamdar, Inamdar. My bad for all the confusion. Let's get this round started the right way. Just give me a quick second and I'll get started. Shoot, where's
On a second. This is an amendment on, not the amendment of the, so it's an amendment on 7 point again, right?
It's the amendment on the amended version of 7 point.
Okay, so we amended it first, and now we're amending it again in the, okay.
That is correct.
Okay, everyone ready? Okay, I'll just give y'all a quick second. If y'all need to interrupt me, just interrupt me or ask a clarifying question. Otherwise, we'll get started. I just want to clarify something, everyone. When me and Senator He started the Gulf War, it was all Senator He's fault. I told this dude what was going to happen. He didn't listen to me then. Please listen to me now. I honestly think that the 7-point plan that President Trump has implemented is the best thing that he's done in office. But Senator Yan started this. I think it needs a few more tweaks before it actually does its job. 6 amendments to ensure as much peace comes in the upcoming war. Point 1, Amendment 1, the Intelligence Accuracy Amendment. So basically, this plan is going to empower the US and British intelligence to locate Erdogan and high-ranking Turkish officials and the Russian operatives. Amendment 2 is going to require the independent verification of all the intelligence officers before we even capture them or we assassinate them. Why does this matter? Because in a chaotic war zone, mistakes cost lives. Just look to the ACLU when they told you in 2015 that in an assassination attempt under President Barack Obama, a drone accidentally killed 2 innocent civilians. The assassinations are a vital core of this plan and the 7-point advocacy. We need to ensure that no one dies because of a mistake. But then Amendment 2, let's talk about the controlled response to Russia. So basically what this amendment is going to do is to ensure that all Russian strikes are only executed after we exhaust diplomatic options. This goes in plan with Senator Yan's amendment, because what it's going to do as a whole, even if anything happens, we have to ensure that we make a plan with Russia, and only if they do not accept our plan, then we are going to use military force against him. This does a couple things. First, it gives the people who are going to support Senator Schumer's plan the security they want and maintain maintain that we actually do peace before we militarize. But moreover, this is a much better scenario than Senator Schumer's plan because it allows us to respond if Russia doesn't want to deal with our peace talks. This as a whole reduces the risk of a full-scale war with Russia while still defending the strait. But then 3, let's talk about civilian safety and limiting negotiations. So basically, this amendment is going to require all peace negotiations to begin only after verified ceasefires have already happened in Ankara and Istanbul. This makes sure that bombing doesn't coexist with peace talks and ensure everyone stays straight. But then 4th, I think that Senator Yan's amendment to Section 1B is just completely inane, because I honestly think that we need to be able to move all of our officers to Ukraine if needed. So this amendment is also going to get rid of that. But then Amendment 5, let's talk about oversight and accountability. This encompasses Amendment 5 and 6. Basically, this amendment is going to have a 30-day congressional review of all military operations and also a quarterly public report on costs and casualties. But finally, why does any of this matter? 3 things. Number 1, we secure Turkey under the stable insurgent government that we put and make sure it aligns with NATO values in an attempt to respond to Russian aggression. Number 2, we prevent Russian access to the Black Sea because we are protecting the strait, and thus we're protecting Ukraine and Europe from a potential World War III happen. But 3rd and finally, we protect all civilians to ensure a transparent, accountable U.S. role. overall, why does interventionist policy matter more than Senator Chuck Schumer's plan? Because understand, no matter what is going to happen, war is on the brinks. We need to do something before it's too late. Become proactive. Don't sit there and be reactive. But finally, understand, we were put in Congress to fix the United States.
Thank you. We're now line for 4 blocks of questioning on the amendment. Between Yan and Patel, that'll first go to Representative Yan, and he'll go to Yan.
I think the chair, regarding your restoration of section 1A22, sorry, 2, we're still killing the officials no matter if you confirm their identity or not. That will still escalate and create war. If you truly want war, then why are you amending it?
No, that's just the Turkish officials. I think we need to assassinate.
You said Russians.
No. I like my amendment ensures that like we only capture them and it follows with yours. So we only capture Russians and then we assassinate Turkish officials. And
okay. As well as your amendment to 1BB.
Mendoza.
What benefit do we have to being able to move all of our troops over in Europe to Ukraine? What
it's not
benefit do we have
like
from that?
it's not necessarily like all of it. I'm saying if the time comes and we need to do it, we have the option available. Senator Yan's amendment doesn't allow us to do that. That is my main and significant problem with her amendment.
Why is it a problem that we don't have the ability to move literally all of them as is in the
It's
bill?
not even all. It's like we can't even move one officer. That's what her amendment does. So my amendment like completely removes that and says if we need to move people to Ukraine, we're allowed to move people to Ukraine. I think that is a much better solution.
Patel.
Point of order, shouldn't there only be 2 questioning blocks?
There's 4.
NSDA
There's
rules
4.
dictate there's only 1 minute of questioning on any speech given on an amendment.
Okay. Then yeah, it should be 2 then. Because I said 2 earlier, but the party or okay. I guess we'll only default to 2 blocks. We are defaulting to NSDA procedure. It's just when we do amendments on my local circuit, we do 4 speeches. But all right. Seeing as we've allowed both of those, we are now line for a negative speech on the amendment or someone to oppose the amendment. Representative Patel, is that a motion to move to previous question? Or is that a motion to oppose the amendment?
I would like a speech to oppose the amendment.
Okay. Anyone else? Seeing no one else, Representative Patel.
Great. That's Representative Patel, spelled Patel. I'll wait like 10 seconds and then I'll get started. The most important thing when dictating the future is ensuring we never repeat the past. And I'm sure we all remember when Senator Inamdar told us earlier today that he was responsible for the Iraqi invasion. We should always abstain from putting power into the hands of the incompetent, and that should be enough of a reason to fail this amendment. But since we are at a desperate time in need for a voice of true reason, let me advocate why we should specifically fail this new amendment in addition to his past mistakes. There's one glaring issue with his amendment as it stands. It's named Senator Inamdar to feed into his ego. But jokes aside, it adds unnecessary times and diplomatic tension that has been empirically proved to create harm. The first portion of the amendment referencing Erdogan and Russian officials requires independent verification before any information is made public. But why? I can't tell you, and neither can Senator Inamdar. Instead, it adds issues upon issues. The Modern War Institute published an article in 2022 explaining that security verification is necessary when protecting American soldiers from adversary attacks. Our situation isn't anything similar. We aren't protecting Americans by slowing down the information release. We're just giving Turks and Russians another month to run away. The rest of the amendment advocates for an increased use of diplomatic channels while evaluating our future responses. Remember, this didn't work in February of 2022 when Russia invaded Ukraine. It didn't work for the past 3 years when trying to find an answer. What's the reason that it will work now? We are at a time past diplomatic conversation because the Kremlin have proved to us that their main goal isn't to create peace. It's not to listen to Westward standards. It is only to expand West themselves. But this amendment's incompetence doesn't end there, because in Section 1, subsection C7, Senator Inamdar proposes a major negotiation with a major asterisk. Only after the end of hostilities in Ankara and Istanbul can negotiations truly occur. And realize this is highly unlikely for 4 reasons. First, how do you negotiate a ceasefire without having peace talks if you need a ceasefire first? This logically makes no sense. Two, the National Guard and Kurds already possess 80% of the territory. It's highly unlikely that they will end their political rampage now, as they're closer than ever before to a government that will truly respect their wishes. Three, Turkey isn't going to go down without a fight. Since the first Department of War studies were released, it's been clear Turkey has been on a hunt for blood. If they wanted a diplomatic help, they could have given up their Russian relations in hopes of maintaining a NATO one. Instead, they try to create leverage with Russia, and then they failed. Four, we still have our British friends ready to take arms with us, meaning this war will end quickly through one last hostile fight, since the US isn't standing and fighting alone. At the end of the day, we can't let Senator Inamdar conjure another Iraq invasion-esque mistake. We don't need this amendment. Let this bill stand as it is.
Thank you for that speech on the amendment. We're now live for 2 blocks of questioning. Any no questions, please rise. And Inamdar unopposed.
All right, so the independent verification part of my of my amendment is only in access in towards relations to assassinations, right? Isn't it very important that we make sure the person we're killing is the right person?
I thought we removed assassinations already altogether from Senator Yan's name.
No, Senator Yan's amendment only removed it from Russians, right?
Okay.
So we can still assassinate.
I still don't understand the point of withholding this information.
It's not withholding, it's just a confirmation by a senior officer.
So you need 2 different countries to go through their entire security process, review over the
The
information,
block
and
has
then
elapsed. Are there any further questions?
Yeah.
Inamdar, would you like to continue that block?
Yeah, so it is not by 2 countries, right? It's just a senior officer who's there. This is just independent verification we've used in the past, and it doesn't cause major time delays for the assassinations or the
Okay, but independent verification also means that the UK has their own independent procedure. The US also has their own independent procedure, which means
that's not what
you
it
said both. You didn't say combined. You didn't say conjoined or anything. That's where my confusion comes.
So
if you
that is
clarify
not what it
this,
means.
then that part's okay. You can yield that part, but the rest of my
that's simply just not what it means. I explained to you in my speech what it does mean. You can also search it up. You don't have to go through
the block has elapsed. Take your plaque, take your seat. The chair would highly favor a motion to move the previous question on the debate. Or Yan?
To move the previous question. To move the previous question.
That doesn't need a 2/3 majority. All those wish to move to the previous question on the debate. All those wish to the previous question. 1, 2. That is the clear majority, and even is 2/3. I will now move to the previous question. Now it is just one simple majority to pass the amendment. All those wish to pass the amendment, please raise your placard and keep them up until I've counted everyone. 1, 2, 3, 4 Yoffe, 4 Yoffe. Anyone else who wishes to pass the amendment? I'm gonna call all those who wish to fail the amendment, just to confirm. Seeing as there are a clear majority to fail the amendment does not pass. I will now once again call for anyone who wishes to sponsor the 7-point plan or first affirmative. We do need someone to sponsor or give the first affirmative on the 7-point plan. We've amended it so y'all could
give me
speak on it.
If you give me 2 minutes, I can sponsor it.
That was out of order. Can we call for a recess to discuss, or
Motion.
can someone just give the Representative Yan? Representative Tuli,
2-minute in-house recess.
any seconds? Seeing as there are seconds, that has been granted. All right, the recess has officially elapsed. I'm now once again gonna call for someone to sponsor the 7-point plan, or at least give the first Representative Yan unopposed.
Thank you. This is a sponsorship speech. Okay. Parley, judges, and PO, let me know when you're ready for me to start.
I'm always ready.
Okay. I rise to sponsor the new 7-point plan because it responds to the situation we are facing, not the situation that we wish we had. This legislation is about preventing a bad situation before it becomes an irreversible one. 1 month after the Six Arrow bill was passed, the Turkish government is collapsing internally, and Russian forces are moving to the Bosphorus Strait with the goal of conquering the Black Sea. This is not a moment where disengagement can freeze the conflict, but it is a moment where absence can create an opportunity for Russia. The new 7-point plan is designed to block Russia's leverage while avoiding the escalation traps of earlier proposals. Section 1 removes assassination authority entirely and replaces it with capture-only authority for accountability. This matters because targeted killings of Russian officials would almost guarantee retaliation, while capture preserves pressure without forcing that escalation. Section 2 limits the military engagement strictly to defensive objectives. The U.S. forces are authorized only to defend Istanbul, the Bosphorus Strait, and allied personnel, with all preemptive or retaliatory strikes beyond those objectives prohibited. This ensures that deterrence does not just quietly turn into an open warfare in Europe. Section 3 eliminates the relocation of American troops into Ukraine. Opening a second front does not stop Russia at the Bosphorus and only expands escalation beyond the scope of this crisis we are facing right now. Section 4 restricts the troop deployment missions to defense, evacuation, and humanitarian protection. This prevents mission creep while still protecting civilians and strategic choke points in our mission. Taken together, these sections narrow force to purpose instead of expanding the authority broadly. The Turkish Stability Act is based on the idea that withdrawal will reduce risk. In this specific scenario, that assumption completely fails. Russia is waiting on an opportunity. That opportunity is given when we kill their officials. A collapsing Turkish state and an undefended Bosphorus create leverage that Russia has every incentive to seize. Declaring neutrality does not prevent that outcome, but it rather accelerates it. Once Russia controls the Bosphorus, simple diplomacy cannot undo it. The balance of the Ukrainian war will shift immediately, and escalation will become even harder to stop. By contrast, the new 7-point plan prevents that leverage from forming in the first place. It does not escalate, but it does not pretend that this engagement is prevention. When we weigh these two approaches together, the difference is clear. The Turkish Stability Act accepts the risk of Russian control in exchange for short-term disengagement. The new 7-point plan blocks that risk while still limiting escalation and keeping flexibility. If Russia controls the Bosphorus, Ukraine suffers and war will widen significantly. Choosing the Turkish stability means accepting that risk in exchange for disengagement. The new 7-point plan prevents it by keeping escalation contained, and that is the better choice. For those reasons, I urge this chamber to support the new 7-point plan. Thank you.
Thank you for that speech of 2 minutes and 44 seconds. We're now 2 minutes and 50 seconds. We're now in line for 4 bucks a question. Any questioners, please rise. Yoffe, Henson, that'll go at Henson.
Hi, Representative. So would deterring Russia be possible by just having the United States there?
I don't believe so. Russia isn't really scared of us.
Exactly. We need to call on other people to help us, right?
It's possible. In
Right,
what
because
context are you speaking?
Well, in your bill, in Section C6, it outlines that we have to call on other NATO ally or previous NATO allies, correct?
Mm-hmm.
So what allies would be allies would we be able to call on if they clearly want nothing to do with us?
Well, how can you know they don't want anything to do with us? We have the British people behind us.
Senator, do you or do you not agree that in the Turkish Stability Act, we also try to activate peace talks?
Can you repeat the last 2 words?
In the Stability Act, we advocate for peace talks.
Peace talks. Yes.
Okay, so if we're advocating for peace talks and we're doing so without harming the most important economic and military part of Russia, why would we not want
Russia
to
is not
support
just
that
going.
bill?
Russia's not just going to give up this all for peace. Russia has, for ceasefire, Russia has broken ceasefire 25 times since 2014. They're not going to promise it.
Hey, if in the city of Ankara is in disorder, why should we just continue the fight?
I'm not saying we should continue to fight. I'm saying we need to defend Istanbul and not kill Russian officials as to have further escalation.
Yes, if we're continuing the fight, that means we're not giving
Well, we can't just give up the Bosphorus Strait, can we? We can't just give it up.
I mean, we have to understand that right now, it's not if we're gonna give away the Bosphorus Strait.
Right, but we can't trust Russia.
So If Russia is currently in the midst of a war with Ukraine, they're dedicating lots of their resources to it. How are they magically just going to access the Bosphorus Strait just instantly?
Well, we can already see that they're advancing, or there are Russian officials in the Turkish land for the reason of getting the Bosphorus Strait. That's a clear thing that we can all see. So I'm not sure what your
Why can't you
question
just
is.
suddenly just connect the fact that the Bosphorus Strait, their only reason they're doing Red Trident is for the Bosphorus Strait?
Yes, that is the main reason they're getting it because they for the past couple years they have
A
been wanting
block
the
has
Black
elapsed.
Sea
You're
to
now
win the
in for a
war.
speech on the Turkey Stability Act. Anyone wish to speak on the Turkey Stability Act, please rise. Gullapali, is that a speech? My
Yes.
internet went. Between Gullapali, he, Mendoza, and Vela, the other first get represent Gullapali.
Everyone, this is Representative Gullapalli. After 50 minutes of amendments, speaking for the final time, spelled Gullapalli. I'm just going to take silence as an indication that everyone is ready, and I'll begin on my first word. In 1923, Turkish rebels gained independence from Greece and Armenia. But that victory came with backlash, mass population displacement, ethnic tensions, and decades of internal unrest. History has a way of repeating itself, because 103 years later, Kurdish rebels are now attempting the very same path to independence. I tried warning y'all last month, but the most important thing is that we can still change. Pass the Turkish Stability Act because it prioritizes stability, restraint, and peace over escalation. First, let me recap everything that's happened over the past month, because boy oh boy, it's been crazy. In his memorandum, President Trump confirmed US involvement escalated the Turkish civil war and failed to stabilize it. And that makes sense, because we sent troops there in order to determine a victor. But shortly after, NATO mobilization collapsed, allies refused to cooperate, and multiple member states withdrew. That breakdown accumulated into the NATO Secretary General's resignation letter, which formally declared NATO, quote, effectively disbanded. Then, Russia exploited this chaos. The presidential memorandum explicitly states that President Putin launched Operation Red Trident to specifically capitalize on NATO's fragility and instability in Turkey, opening a new front and raising the risk of a direct US Russia confrontation. Finally, the documents confirm that the war's outcome is already nearing resolution. A presidential memorandum states that Turkish government is, quote, on its last legs, while the Turkish Stability Act itself notes that the Republican Guard and Kurdish insurgencies are on the verge of declaring total victory. So what's the unique solvency of acting neutral now of all times? This engagement directly reduces harm because it removes the United States from the main drivers of escalation at the most volatile moment of the conflict. When US forces remain involved while a government is collapsing, they stop influencing outcomes and start magnifying violence. Our presence incentivizes last ditch fighting, encourages rival powers to intervene against us, and turns local battles to proxy confrontations. We saw this happen in Vietnam, we saw this happen in Afghanistan. By withdrawing now, the US lowers the incentive for Russia to counter escalate, reducing civilian casualties caused by prolonged fighting, and prevents American troops from becoming targets in a war whose outcome is already determined. Russia doesn't really care about who wins the Turkish war. It just doesn't want American presence near strategic interests. We already learned this in President Trump's memorandum. Don't give Russia the incentive to further escalation. The side that wins today's debate is the side that can most ensure both innocent and American lives are saved. The burden of the opposition is to prove how US presence objectively saves more lives than US neutrality. If they fail to do that, your vote will always be in the Turkish Stability Act. Pass. Thank you.
Thank you for that speech of exactly 3 minutes and 15 seconds. We're now in for 4 blocks of questioning. Any questioners, please rise. Yan and opposed.
You're muted.
Representative Yan,
you're muted.
Sorry. Can you point to any line in the document that states Russia will reduce aggression if the United States disengages?
No, so it's essentially how it's been worked in the past. Past president shows this, and we can also the document itself literally said that the only reason that Russia even got involved in the first place was because NATO was disbanded.
Okay,
I'd argue,
and for your past presidents, you cite Vietnam and Afghanistan. Can you explain
yeah.
how those cases are comparable to a narrow chokehold defense like the Bosphorus?
How does a narrow show? Because there's still key things that both areas want.
Okay, so if we pass your bill, is Russia just gonna leave the Bosphorus Strait?
Probably not. No.
No, right? So no matter what bill we've passed, the Russia's still gonna take the Bosphorus Strait. Why not show some resistance and make sure they don't control global trade?
Yeah, but that's just like I just don't believe the fact that that Russia's just gonna like gain all control of the Bosphorus Strait like for no reason.
Why not?
They're
It's
currently
like
wait, they're currently in a full blown war with Ukraine, and they're giving lots of their everything, basically everything they're giving to Ukraine.
Stop. Are there any further questions? Representative Yan, you have the floor.
Sorry. Based on your answer, which is that they're in full-blown war, this is the one thing that could help them win that war. Why wouldn't they want it?
Yeah, but they don't have any resources to provide towards the Bosphorus Strait.
They'll
They're
put all
already
their
using so much of it in Ukraine.
They will put all their resources into this if it means they can win the war, and it means
If they
will
put
win
all
the
their resources into this, they're gonna have nothing on the front lines against Ukraine. Then they lose that war on that front.
If they win this, they win the war.
But if they no,
It's
that's
simple.
just not
It's
true.
pretty simple.
If
they
they
win
if they
Bosphorus
use their
Strait-
resources for this, they're gonna lose the front on that war.
it's really simple that if they win this, they win.
That's just not true.
Okay, Turkey is on the verge of collapse. If we leave, the insurgent groups have no support. What resistance are they facing in the Bosphorus Strait?
Turkey's not on the verge of collapse. As President Trump himself said in the memorandum, the insurgent groups are winning and they will win.
Exactly, right? So Turkey's already...
That doesn't mean they're on the verge of collapse.
No, what resistance will Russia have around the Bosphorus Strait without us?
Yeah, so that's what I'm saying. They can't even get the Bosphorus Strait in the first place because they're already using so many of their resources for the Ukraine war.
Like, what resources do they need if they have no resistance from anyone else?
Stop. That block is loud. You may take your placard. You may take your seat. Please do not abuse the grace period. Please do not figure out one of them questioning blocks. So now the speech on the Turkey Stability Act. You're now line for a speech on the 7-point plan. Can anyone speak on this? All people wishing to speak on the 7-point plan, please rise. All those wishing to speak on the 7-point plan, please rise. This is the second speech on the 7-point plan. Can anyone speak on the 7-point plan now? The chair would favor a motion for a recess. Representative Yan, or we can.
Motion for 1-minute recess in House.
Any seconds to that? Seeing none, the chair will not move to 1-minute House recess. And the chair will not move to break cycle. Anyone who wishes to speak on the Turkey Stability Act, please rise. Representative He, unopposed.
Hey y'all, happy to get this debate continued. Speaking as the second speaker for the Turkish Stability Act, if my judges could just give me a thumbs up when they're ready, that'd be great. David, you good? Cool. All right. Last session, Senator Inamdar said that we orchestrated the Iraq war together. No, I didn't. Personally, I would never do something that thoughtless of our constituents. I mean, I am the epitome of America. I eat McDonald's every meal, bleed red, white, and blue, and I drive a Ford F-150. But look, America's ideals were never meant to be celebrated by just one nation. Today, the Turkish Stability Act is the only bill that actually shares American values. Now first, 1 month ago, I told this chamber that we had solutions to the Star and Moon plan, but unfortunately we passed the 6 Arrows plan instead. I want to pause and look at the situation now. NATO is a goner, Turkey's war is still raging, and Russia is becoming more bold than ever before. Yet somehow, even with Senator Yan's amendment, the 7-point plan has concluded that the best option is to capture everyone and go out guns blazing in a preemptive World War III strike. I think there's a better idea. Let's address all 3 issues. First, let's go back to NATO. General Secretary Mark Rutte told us that NATO collapsed because they think that countries think that the United States is being too ambitious. Now it's time for us to take a step back and prove to the world that our priority lies with peace and prosperity. And here's why it's not too late. The Network for Strategic Analysis studied small countries in NATO, including Bulgaria, one of the first to leave, on July 17th of 2025. They explained that these small countries were committed to NATO because Article 5 was their biggest shield. The only reason they just left is because they think NATO is incredible. This policy's withdrawal of a power grab and additional humanitarian aid restores that trust. And look, as long as these countries trust us, they'll want to be with the United States because the US military is a lot stronger than Northern Macedonia's. But second, what about Turkey? Erdogan earlier told us that he was willing to resign. I don't think peace means killing a man giving up. The amended bill still sanctions that under Section 1AI. Wiping out any opposition just sets the foundation for a new dictatorship and a new ethnic cleansing. I think that the pace we're on right now is pretty good. The 10 billion from the Six Arrows plan still is in effect, and humanitarian aid under the Turkish Stability Act will further help that. That means the rebels that we supported are going to win, but Erdogan is forced to step down and look towards peaceful negotiation instead of killing him entirely. But third, look towards Russia. Our President Donald Trump told us that Russia has launched Operation Red Trident. Senator Gullapali on my side explained that that's because NATO and Turkey are both weak right now. I just proved to you this legislation strengthens both Senator Yan and Senator Goparaju instead of sparking a conflict through targeted attacks. You go back to the system we've seen work for the last 75 years. Deterrence. That's the only balanced equation that we've seen have proof. Regardless of my participation in Iraq, I know American values. This bill is the only choice past this Turkish Stability Act.
Thank you for that speech of exactly 3 minutes and 10 seconds. We're now lined for 2 blocks of questioning. Any no questioners, please rise. Yan and opposed.
So you said NATO collapsed because the United States was too ambitious. Oh wait, never mind. If Article 5 is what kept the small states in NATO, how does the full US disengagement restore that credibility instead of weakening it further?
These small countries believe that the United States wouldn't back up Article 5 because they thought we were too ambitious. The thing is that now if we're showing that we actually care about peace and prosperity, that rebuilds the credibility of NATO.
And why would allies trust American security guarantees more after we leave the most
The
dangerous
reason they
moment?
trust us for the last few decades because we're the strongest military.
So, Senator, I completely agree with you that maybe peace will restore NATO. But if we disengage from NATO's original main enemy, Russia, are we not showing that Russia could push us around, which makes us look weak in the eyes of all the nations
We're
that were
not
previously
disengaging
part of
with
NATO?
Russia directly. What
That's
we're doing
exactly
is
what
going
we're
back to the
doing.
plan that worked. We're using deterrence, which is through strengthening NATO and strengthening Turkey.
No, we're completely withdrawing ourselves from Turkey, which in turn giving them back the Bosphorus Strait.
The alternative is shooting officials in Turkey.
No,
That's
the
really bad
alternative
and
is
ruins
making it so we
stability
look
more.
weak to the entire world, including Russia.
Looking towards peace is not a sign of weakness.
Stop. The block has elapsed. You may take your placard and take your seat. We're now lined for speech on the 7-point plan. I'll state that.
Exit the chamber.
Granted.
Thank
I'm not calling for all people who speak on all senators who should speak on the 7-point plan. Please rise. Once again, all 7-point plan speakers, please rise. Seeing none, the chair will now move to break cycle because the debate must go on. All those wishing to speak on the Turkish Stability Act, please rise. Marshal Henson does a speech on the Turkish Stability Act. You have the floor and
Yes.
opposed.
Great. Hi, everyone. I'm speaking a little bit earlier than expected, but if I could just get a thumbs up from everyone, I'll begin on my first word. Cool. All right. Perfect. In a fragile time, every move matters. NATO is broken, and Russia is using this to their advantage. We are playing a game of chess with the geopolitical atmosphere, and this has presented us with 2 outcomes: a short-term conflict and a long-term win. The Turkish Stability Act will always give us that win. Pass. The two biggest concerns that have come up in today's round are which bill will effectively deter Russia in the long term and which bill will present us with the possibility of restoring NATO. The only legislation that can give us both of these solutions is the Turkish Stability Act. But first, I want to address the 7-point intervention plan, for specifically looking at Section 6C, where we call on past NATO allies as outlined in the bill, because this will literally do nothing. All of our previous outline allies have made it abundantly clear that they want absolutely nothing to do with us, and our own president just gave us this update a few hours ago. So when we call on broken and rocky relationships to help us fix something they believe we created in the first place, we will lose even more of our reputation and dominance on a global stage. And this is where the Turkish Stability Act comes in. But first, I know we've seen numerous amendments thrown around and passed, but at the end of the day, those amendments won't change the outcome because regardless of how we go about dealing with Russian forces, it will always be seen as an act of aggression. And that is why neutrality is the only solution we can have here today. That's because NATO's disassembly created the perfect opportunity for Russia to expand their control. Russia has known that they wouldn't be able to compete with NATO, but now that NATO is out of the way, they can exponentially grow their control of the region. So our biggest priority today should be finding a way to restore NATO and maintaining peace, and that is with the Turkish Stability Act. Senator Gullapalli already proved to you how keeping U.S. troops in that region is genuinely the worst decision to make as it only furthers escalations and risks more lives lost. But this bill will solve NATO's disassembly because the US will pull out of Turkey and present a forward effort to make amends. It doesn't matter if there's a threat of Russia making advancements in the region, because if we don't immediately do something now to get back our allies and restore NATO, then we are doomed to enter a losing battle. Remaining NATO members have no leadership or coordination from the US, and right now we have no power or opinion, but this bill gives us that. By pulling out and staying neutral, we immediately lower the risk of direct conflict between major powers. No military gain is worth triggering a wider war. Further, we actually care about NATO under this legislation, and we have to stop acting alone because that's what created these issues in the first place. We cannot rebuild an alliance while ignoring it. Not only that, but stepping back saves lives, and ending US military support reduces the intensity of potential war and opens the door for peace talks and humanitarian aid that Senator Hayes stated in his speech. The Turkish Stability Act will give us the opportunity to go back into NATO and will present the best strategy for maintaining peace and stability in that region. Pass.
Thank you for that speech of 3 minutes and 13 seconds. We're now live for 2 blocks of questions. Any no questioners, please rise. Once again, any no questioners, please rise for that speech of 3 minutes and 13 seconds. Representative Inamdar.
Hi, I'm just a little bit confused. So the plan is to lie down and stay still while like Russia like rampages Turkey and like Europe, right? Is this the
Okay,
goal?
well, first of all I'm saying is that we need to rethink our priorities here because right now, like everything is so fragile right
I
now.
get what you're telling me, right? To stop and
Yeah.
rethink. But here's the issue. We don't have time, right? Russia's already going in for the kill. Like they're trying to get
Exactly.
Ukraine, they're trying to get this straight.
But
It's time to act now.
But the only difference is in acting now, we're
Representative
actually
Yoffe.
risking more lives.
Senator, do you or do you not agree that by using the Bosphorus Strait, we are able to put restrictions on Russia?
Sure.
Okay, so if we can put restrictions on Russia, could we or could we not leverage those restrictions into a peace talk that would be more effective than simply withdrawing and looking weak to the entire world?
Yes, but that's not possible by just having the United States. We need a full NATO backing, which
Okay,
is
but we
exactly why
have
we
the
need to
backing of Britain. I don't know why your
prioritize
entire side has
refilling
ignored it. We
NATO.
have Britain's full backing.
Britain isn't enough. We need
Britain is
more
completely
people.
enough.
No, they're not. We need every single member back.
Stop, that block has elapsed. You're now line for a speech on the 7-point plan. All those who wish to speak on the 7-point plan, please rise. Representative Mendoza, you have the floor.
Thank you, Chair. That's Representative Mendoza, Mendoza, speaking for the last time in this legislative session. I'm going to assume all the judges and everyone are ready. If you're not, just give me a shout. And with that, let's get started. So in the last session, about, a month ago, I voted for the 6-arrow plan. I felt that that was the best, and yes, I'm gonna be honest, I did not foresee NATO collapsing entirely. I didn't know it was that fragile, but let's look at what we have, because I'm sure both sides can agree that no solution is perfect. Whether we pass the 7 points as amended or whether we pass the Turkish stability, we're going to have issues. It's not like conflict with Russia is just going to magically disappear. But here's what we do have to address. My first point goes directly against what Senator Henson had to say. Yes, a lot of NATO was not on board with us. That is kind of why NATO disassembled. And as if Senator Yoff's point wasn't enough, that we have the backing of the UK, not every NATO country was against us. The UK says that a lot of countries aren't helping each other out now, but that is not all of them. What it looks like to me, and when you read the Turkish stability resolution there, this joint resolution just seems like we are going to try to fix this by just hit the reset button, undo, which is great. And like, I love the idea of peace, right? And peace negotiations. But I mean, even in this legislation, we see we're going for peace negotiations. The Turkish Stability Act is not the only way to achieve that. Here's the issue. Turkey won't forgive us. They're almost completely knocked out of this race. If we say, "Oh, I'm sorry, we'll pull out now," they're not going to forgive us. NATO isn't just going to get the band back together because we said, "I'm sorry, we're going to leave." In addition to the fact that leaving Turkey is not advantageous to us, it's not just, stop fighting in Turkey. Turkish stability has us just getting everyone and everything out of Turkey that is ours, which we are going to continue our conflict with Russia. That's just a point. Even if you pass that Stability Act there, you're still going to have that conflict. This conflict has been going on for so long outside of the Turkey issue we just caused. So passing this is, I hate to say this because it's such an overused rhetorical term in Congress, but it's a band-aid over a bullet hole. You're really just not doing anything. We have to say sorry. Oh, cry me a river. Saying sorry never solved anything, at least not politically or in war. And I hate to be so rough about this, and I hate to seem like I have no care for what's going on in the world. But you just have to look at this from an advantageous perspective for us, and it's that we aren't winning by passing a resolution that says we draw out, we try to talk peace, and everything is solved. Because nothing is going to solve this, but I'll tell you one thing. Leaving and allowing Russia to just rampage through and try to take that Bosphorus Strait is not helping us. Completely leaving Turkey isn't helping us. And I wish I could offer you a better solution, but the only way we can actually have action is a bill that has action in it, not inaction, and that is why we must pass the 7-point plan.
Thank you for that speech of exactly 3 minutes and 15 seconds. We're now on for 2 blocks of questioning. Any questioners, please rise. He unopposed.
Let's talk about like NATO, right? Logically, for smaller countries, they want the United States support, right?
I'd say so.
Okay, so they want to be a part of NATO. They just don't think that NATO is very credible right now, right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so if we make NATO more credible by showing that we actually care about peace, wouldn't that make these countries rejoin NATO?
I'd love to think so, but I feel like we're at the point where we have betrayed their trust after what, 50, 70 so years,
But
that
what
they're not
about the
going to think.
alternative, right?
Henson.
If we pass it,
Right, following that line of questioning, wouldn't showing like putting a good front forward and saying that we want peace and we're advocating for peace, wouldn't that just make people want to rejoin NATO?
I don't believe that passing the Turkish Stability Act shows that we
That's
just
not
want
my
peace.
question. I'm asking us showing that we want peace. Wouldn't
Okay,
that make
I'll
people
answer
want
your
to
question.
rejoin NATO?
Us showing that we want peace would be very beneficial in that, but I don't believe
Exactly,
that
it
is
would.
showing that we want peace because
So
that's not actually solving anything. We're
Stop,
just
the block
stepping
has
back.
elapsed. We are
Thank
now we're now calling for all senators speaking on the Turkey Stability Act to please rise. Vela unopposed.
This is Representative Vela, Vela spelled Vela, speaking, rising for the last time in today's legislative session. Again, judges, I can't see you, so if you're not ready, just yell out. That I'll begin on my first word. A child in Ankara, starving and wounded. Families huddled in basements, praying the next attack doesn't fall on them. Hospitals are overflowing day by day, and more innocent lives are being lost. While this Congress's inaction leads us to have to pass. Now, Senator Yon and everyone in this round, I believe y'all have missed the goal of today's debate. We have to understand that the single most important goal for today's debate is to protect civilians and provide humanitarian aid in Turkey. Without halting the fighting, any gains we have made and innocent lives will be lost. That is why you passed the Turkish Stability Act. But Senator Inamdar and Yan are going to ask, why not go after and bring justice to President Erdogan and any other official? Now, Senator, he brought this up, but let me rumble where he fumbled. The reason why we shouldn't do this is because it adds to the fighting, putting even more civilians at risk. The city of Ankara is reaching near anarchy levels. If we don't do anything, we only exacerbate the cycle of pain. So for the rest of my speech, let me show you why the Turkish Stability Act solves this issue. First, civilians in Turkey are dying every day. Further U.S. military involvement would only escalate the conflict in the region. Withdrawing forces and halting combat operations, the act prevents more lives from being lost. History has shown that intervention by this nation worsens civil wars. In Iraq, U.S. involvement increased civilian casualties and instability, showing that military action can legitimize suffering rather than preventing it. Second, is that this act establishes U.S. humanitarian aid, giving the U.S. the ability to work with all parties to deliver food, medical care, and safe passage to civilians. By focusing on aid and in diplomacy first, the U.S. can help stabilize communities and ensure protection of all citizens comes before further violence occurs. As the Journal of Conflict Resolution in January 2025 tells us that foreign aid in fragile states deterred violence by 15%. But Senator Yan and Inamdar, who warn that we will lose the Bosphorus Strait if we don't act, I tell you this, we invested billions of dollars into creating two states that are capable of checking Russia while we are able to go deliver aid. The real question is, what happens if we don't pass this legislation? It's that thousands of more civilians in Turkey will continue to die, and ongoing fighting overwhelms hospitals, leaving children and families without the access to resources they need. As Taylor and Francis in 2020 tells us that in Yemen's conflict, aid disruption led to 40% higher famine deaths, with hospitals at 200% capacity and children denied of resources. Representative Yan, when we can go neutral, we can get the resources the people need. We cannot let more lives being lost. Pass.
Stop. Thank you for that speech of 3 minutes and 15 seconds. We're now on for 2 blocks of questioning. Any no questioners, please rise. Yeah, none opposed.
Thank you. If this engagement makes the Russian expansion more likely, how does that reduce the total civilian death overall? Because the Russians would go through the Black Sea and finish the Ukrainian war and then possibly even expand the war further.
Because I'm telling you, when we affirmed the 6 arrow plans, we invested billions of dollars into helping create 2 sufficient states.
Could you please answer my question?
Yeah, I'm doing that. When we invested those billions of dollars, we're making 2 states that can help deter Russian expansion. That is how we're going to deter.
Patel.
Yes,
no, it doesn't.
Isn't it also important to keep in mind the quality of life these Turkish people will face if the Turkish regime was to regain power in the government? Because we know that they're going to be authoritarian, so shouldn't we have action to stop that and just finish it off?
I'm confused because the Democratic Nation of People and the Kurds have control of the 80% of Turkey right now. So I'm confused how it's going to turn into
20% away from having a safe regime that isn't going to be authoritarian.
Yeah, but we invested billions of dollars.
Stop. The block is loud. You take your placard and take your seat. So now to speak for the Turkish Stability Act. We're now in for a speech on the 7-point plan. All those wishing to speak on the 7-point plan, please rise. President Patel, is that a speech or is your hand up still from questioning?
Sorry.
Listening Goparaju and Tuli. That'll go to Representative Goparaju.
Hey everyone, this is Representative Goparaju speaking for the second time in this long session. Judges, POs, I still can't see you, so just give me a shout if you're not ready. Before World War II, Hitler didn't start with a world war. He started by breaking treaties, remilitarizing territory, and taking land piece by piece. Each move was met with the same response. Okay, you can have what you want here, but just this one. Seriously, no more after this. And then there was another, just this one, and another. That pattern, letting small aggressions slide until they become unstoppable, is exactly why decisive action now is safer than restraint that only delays the inevitable. Pass the 7-point plan. Now, first, Senator Gullapali told us that Russia doesn't care about the Turkey situation and that they just care about the Bosphorus Strait. But then he told us that Turkey is weak, the rebel groups are weak, and Russia doesn't have the resources to fight. Senator, your entire speech is an oxymoron. First of all, the presidential memo shows that we are about to win this war. Why pull out now? Past precedent shows that when we pull out last second, the people who we help lose. The RAND in 2021 shows us. In Afghanistan and Vietnam, the United States pulled out, even without losing any key battles, leading to the collapse of the US-backed government. We are weeks away from winning this war, putting a democratic government, and fighting back against dictatorships. The best move is to keep going, win the war, and make a government that helps its people, not pull out last second. But then next, Senator He talks about how countries will trust us if we do nothing. That is uncategorically untrue. Let's just look at why NATO itself disbanded. The latest NATO report shows us that due to the near unanimous rejection of the Turkish command effort, it is evident that the North Atlantic Treaty Organization has collapsed. Senator He, NATO collapsed because we did nothing. Why would we do nothing again? Moreover, Senator Henson, we don't need a full NATO backing. We have Britain at minimum, and Senator Mendoza already brought up how more countries could join. We already have 2 global superpowers, and we can get more. But finally, the main reason you pass the 7-point plan is because you save the most civilian lives. Everyone in this debate can agree that the insurgent groups are about to win because of US support. So, when we take away that very US support, all of a sudden, Turkey has a chance of fighting back, and we only lengthen the conflict. The presidential memo shows that the Turkish government is on its last legs, and in a matter of weeks, we expect the regime to fall. The war, then, is effectively won. We are about to win this war, end this conflict, and end the bloodshed in weeks. But the second you leave, Turkey has a chance, and the war keeps raging on. Here's why. The Council on Foreign Affairs in 2025 shows us. Historically, Erdogan has done whatever is necessary to stay in power. The second you take away US force from the insurgent groups, Turkey has a fighting chance. And they will take that chance, and they will fight. Pass the 7-point plan. Don't give them that chance. And stop the bloodshed.
Thank you for that speech of 3 minutes and 4 seconds. We're now in for 2 blocks of questioning. Any and all questioners, please rise. Between he and Gullapali, that'll first go to Representative Gullapali.
All right, Senator, I'm just a bit confused. How can you say we did nothing for NATO to disband when it was literally your side that gave the rebels funding?
Okay, NATO did nothing, right? We didn't act anything, and that's why people left. People were scared that when they're in trouble, NATO won't do anything, right? Like, NATO did no actions with the US itself.
Sorry, can you repeat that last part?
So NATO itself didn't engage in any military conflict. It was the US. Like, NATO did nothing.
Yeah, I still don't understand how that has anything to do with the fact of anything in your speech. Like, there's no link.
Okay, the reason people left.
Stop, Vela.
Hey, if we are helping invest into strong nations using billions of dollars, how will they not be able to deter Russia?
Okay, well, it's Russia, right? They have trillions of dollars. Like, this is one of the best militaries in the world. Like, a small nation with a few billions isn't gonna do it.
They're 2 strong nations, because if we're investing billions of dollars, how are they not going to be able to deter them from taking expansion? Plus, if Russia...
You want to let me finish? Okay, when comparing to Russia, billions of dollars is like pennies.
Yeah, but they'll be fighting a two-front war.
Stop, the block is allowed. You're now in for a speech on the Turkish Stability Act. All those wishing to speak on the Turkish Stability Act, please rise. Once again, all those wishing to speak on the Turkish Stability Act, please rise. The chair front up on the one side people and now move the break cycle. All those wishing to speak on the 7-point plan, please rise. Okay, Inamdar and Tuli, that'll first go to Representative Tuli.
Hey guys, this is Representative Tuli. That's Tuli. Again, Tuli. Speaking for the last time again on the 7 points plan. I'm going to assume all my judges are ready just so that we can get out of here faster. But if you're not, start frantically waving your arms around. During the Cold War, America's children were taught duck and cover drills, where students were taught to duck and cover under desks to protect themselves from Soviet bombs. It's a real shame that 75 years later, Kurdish children are being taught the same drill to protect themselves against the same enemy. We won because of our military strength. Extend that privilege to Turkey. Not Turkey, but the Kurdish. First, pass the 7 points plan to maintain our leverage needed to end the conflict before it escalates. Now let's recap. Both sides agree that the only reason why Russia launched Operation Red Trident was to capture Istanbul. But currently, we're pretty much in control of it. According to the most recent letter from President Trump, along with allied forces, we now control 80% of Turkey and the only city that Russia wants, Istanbul. Representatives Gullapali, this is all that Russia is in Turkey for. If we are going to go into peace talks in either world to try and settle this conflict, it is way better if we have this leverage over Russia. But next, I want to work within this framework and compare which legislation protects Istanbul the best. First is the Turkish Stability Act. Representatives Gullapali, he, and Henson think that the best way to protect Istanbul from Russian control is to pull out the entire U.S. military. How much did Vladimir pay you to say that? Russia will happily march on to Istanbul if they don't even have to fire a bullet. On the other hand, under my plan of the 7 points plan, we maintain our strong military in Turkey to maintain that control over Istanbul. This world will always yield more favorable peace talks to actually ending the conflict and seeking real peace. That's the fundamental difference between speakers like Representative Gullapali and I. They want Russia to be able to choose if they want to escalate. I want Russia to be so scared of our red, white, and blue soldiers that they're forced to end the conflict. But second, let's clear the air on the NATO debate. Representative Henson makes it extremely clear in saying that she wants to back out and then fire back with the entirety of NATO through a strong Article 5. What? Why would we ever let Russia take control of Turkey and then come back with the entirety of NATO and then spark another war? It's sounding ominously close to World War III. Comparatively, it is always going to be safer to resolve the conflict now by using the leverage that we have in the status quo, rather than liquefying all of it and coming back later and trying to seek peace. Military intelligence sounds the air raid sirens across Istanbul's classrooms. It's through intelligent negotiations that one day the Kurds won't need to duck at all.
Thank you for that speech of exactly 3 minutes and 15 seconds. We're now on for 2 blocks of questioning. Any questioners, please rise. Gullapali and he, the first get Representative he.
Okay, right now, what troops do we have with the Bosphorus Strait right now?
The 30,000 troops we allocated last month.
Yeah, exactly. So we don't have support from NATO. We don't have support from a stabilized Turkey.
Yeah, okay.
That
If we
30,000
come
is
back,
supposed to fight off the entirety of Russia.
yeah, we can fight off the entirety of Russia or the United States. But even if we go back and come back with a stronger Article 5,
Wait, so you just told me that 30,000 is going to, so that 30,000 troops is going to fight Russia. Doesn't that spark a larger war that you're scared of?
It's way less. It's comparatively
Stop,
less worse
Gullapali.
than your war with the entirety of NATO.
So, in what world can Russia sustain a war in both Ukraine and Turkey?
This world, like if
Actually,
if
it's not
we
true. They're
wait,
already
no,
falling-
listen,
Wait,
let me respond.
Pause. No, 1 second. They're already falling behind in the Ukraine war. How do you just magically expect them to win a war on Turkey too?
Okay, so then if we pull out all of our troops, then they're 100% going to be able to fight both wars.
That's just not
the
true.
issue with your entire side.
There still are other troops in Turkey. You just fail to recognize that.
No, we're pulling out Britain
Yeah,
and the
no.
United
When you
States.
just add more
Stop
troops,
blocking
you
the
give
line.
an opportunity for escalation.
This speech was for the speech was for Turkey's stability. And let's point with 7-point plan. I apologize because we broke cycle. I just put it on the wrong side of my sheet. This was in fact for the 7-point plan. Seeing out a speech on the 7-point plan, we are now in for a speech on the Turkish Stability Act. All those wishing to speak on the Turkish Stability Act, please rise. Gullapali did a speech. Once again, calling for all those wishing to speak on the Turkish Stability Act, please rise.
Motion for a 20-second in-house recess.
Any seconds?
Second.
20-second in-house recess.
Okay, so we had like terrible splits originally, and then everyone flipped to Turkey Stability Act, and then I flipped back to 7-point.
I think
But
everyone else also flipped back to 7-point to try to make the debate more
I
even.
think
So now we're
we-
just gonna have like 4 more speeches in a row because no one else has Turkey.
I mean, does anyone
know
have
what else.
Turkey speeches? I don't understand how we even got to this scenario.
Recess has officially elapsed.
Motion.
State that.
Extend the recess by another minute.
Any seconds? There's a VN. That's a second. Okay. Well, now extend the recess by another minute.
So does anybody that was originally planning to give a Turkey Stability Act speech able to give it?
Okay, instead of like breaking cycle, if you're like last round reasons, you're like bottom down, just flip. Like that's all you can do. Instead of giving like 4 7-point speeches in a row.
Also, if it's, I know that we've already had like a person give a second speech, like someone can give a second speech for stability.
I mean, Yan gave 2 speeches because the speech he gave for the amendment counts as like a speech. Those are total speech counter.
I think everyone who gave a speech for the Turkish has already spoken. Or everyone who has one already spoke. It was Vela, Mendoza, Henson, and he.
I mean, yeah, but an extra speech.
But then Mendoza's.
Yeah, I'm gonna be honest. I don't think I could flip that.
The only 3 people with no speeches are Dudinik, Mandare, and Yoffe. So you guys can just like go 3 apps in a row. Yoffe, you have like the worst precedent, so if you want to flip the TSA, that's up to your decision. But I don't think
I would be able to.
Oh, Mandare left.
Okay, so officially elapsed.
Just keep
I hope the judges understand.
Okay, I'm not gonna call for all those wishing to speak on the Turkish Stability Act once again. Anyone speaking on the Turkish Stability Act, please rise. Representative Yoffe for the speech.
I thank the chair. That's Senator Yoffe, spelled Yoffe, speaking for the last time in this round. I know this round has been a little chaotic, but still just a sign of life, and I'll begin on my first word.
Is this for stability or
This is for
7-point?
7-point. I apologize. We good? Yep, just yell at me if you're not ready. So, when a country teeters on the brink of chaos, action is what saves lives. Trump's 7-point plan is our decisive action. Do not let the other side vote for short-term peace instead of long-term stability. First, let me explain exactly what the Bosphorus Strait is so important for, since I think that's just gotten thrown around and ignored throughout this entire debate. Nicholas Myers tells us on March 4th of 2022 in the Foreign Policy Research Institute that the Bosphorus Strait is necessary because without it, Russia doesn't have any access to the Black Sea, which leads them directly to the Mediterranean. If we don't act within the defense of that, then we make sure that Russia's blockade is completely shut down. We ensure that Russia's military access is restricted, which means that it's even harder for them to go to war with us in the first place. But second, that's not the end of it, because the Center for Research and Institute in Clean Air determines in July of this year that Russia earns roughly 192 million pounds per day from their fossil fuel exports directly through the Bosphorus Straits. By maintaining influence over this strait, the United States and our allies are able to restrict Russian access by putting pressure on a key source of revenue that finances its military operations. But the reason that that's so important is simple, because when we have leverage over Russia, we look strong to the entire world. Senators Gullapali, he, and Henson advocate for NATO, and I think that they're completely right. NATO is the most important decision of this entire round. So let me explain exactly why every single time, if you want NATO stability, you vote for the 7-point plan. Because that restores NATO in its entirety. Senator, he says NATO says the United States is incredible. I think that control over Russia shows more credibility than withdrawing from Russia in the first place. Senator Gullapalli told you this already, but let me explain the entire impact. Influence is even more crucial because when we have two of the biggest superpowers as allies, the United States and the United Kingdom, we show our superiority over Russia. We open the floor for a new NATO, one that includes the now democratic Turkey, because the president tells us that we occupy 80% of it already. So after leveraging our power over Russia's military and economy to negotiate peace, we not only get a new NATO, but we get a democratic regime that upholds all of our ideals and still maintains total superiority over the Bosphorus Strait in the first place. When we have a check over the Bosphorus Strait and Russia's biggest military and economic lines over the ocean, we ensure that the new NATO is stronger than it ever was before. So if you want to vote for a new, stronger, and better NATO that is better than anything we could have had in the past, you ensure that we pass the 7-point plan. Let the United States become the founder of the strongest allied forces in the world. Pass Trump's 7-point plan.
Thank you. For that, so you get 3 minutes and 5 seconds. We're now on for 2 blocks of questioning. Any other questioners, please rise. Gullapalli unopposed. Between Gullapalli and Mendoza, that'll go to Mendoza.
Will pulling out of Turkey after all of this effort hurt our global image to the rest of the world?
Absolutely. It'll make us look weak in the face of Russia.
Do you think it'll make it less or more likely to get the NATO countries that opposed this originally to get back with us?
I think it'll make it so we look so weak that it's not even worthwhile to have us to defend them from Russia. Since if we can't even defend ourselves, what are we doing?
Thank you.
Charles Brothers remaining 6 seconds of the questioning block. Between Vela and Gullapalli, that'll go Representative Vela.
How will that make us look peace if we have helped create almost two new nations in Turkey?
Okay, so if we help to create 2 new nations and then immediately throw them to the dust by withdrawing from those nations and letting them be wrecked by Russia, how does that actually make us look strong?
Hold on. We're not throwing them to the dust if we've invested billions of dollars for them to stand alone.
Okay, so we've invested billions of dollars, but then no country is able to stand alone against Russia.
Yeah, who will be fighting a two-front
If even
war.
we can't fight against Russia, neither can they.
We're now on for a speech on the Turkey Stability Act, given that last week was on the 7-point plan. All those wishing to speak on the Turkey Stability Act, please rise. Once again, all those wishing to speak on the Turkey Stability Act, please rise.
Motion.
Say that, Representative Patel.
10-second in-house recess.
Any seconds?
Second.
Does anybody else want to speak on the 7-point plan? Because I have stability if we need it.
I made a 7-point plan, and I was trying to
Does
speak.
Dudinik want to speak on it? If not, then we just go to previous question.
The block has officially elapsed.
I think
recess has officially elapsed.
Motion.
Representative Tuli.
Barring all further speeches, I motion a previous question.
Second.
Any
seconds? Okay. Are there more putting any objections? Seeing no objections to the previous question, we'll now move to the previous question. All those who wish to pass the 7-point plan, please raise your placard. I count a total of 6. All those wishing to pass the Turkey Stability Act, please raise your plan. Please raise your placard. Representative Tuli. Okay. Representative Dudinik. Okay, I count 1 Yoffe. Representative Dudinik.
My hand was up by
Did you vote
accident.
twice? Oh, okay. I apologize. Okay. On a vote of 6 to 7, this policy doesn't work. We passed the Turkey Stability Act. Are there any
Motion.
further motions at the moment? Representative
Motion. Orders of the day and adjourn.
State that.
Second.
He's lagging. Can we turn off all our cameras?
Motion for orders of the day is decision of the chair, but adjourn is 2/3. Yeah, my internet's kind of. Adjourn is 2/3 majority, but motion to move the order to the day is my decision. All those wishing to adjourn, please raise your placard before we move the order to the day. Yeah. That's a clear 2/3 majority. We'll now move to adjourn. Before we do that, we'll go through orders of the day. We passed the Turkey Stability Act. We gave a total of 9 speeches, including those speeches giving on the amendments. We had a total of 29 questions, with Representative Yon having the most amount of questions. I now adjourn the session at 1:58 p.m.
Before
Thank
y'all
you all for
go,
competing.
as you guys know, this is a scenario round, and so everything that you do does have actual effects. So here's the ending of the scenario, given that you guys chose to pass the Turkey Stability Act. I'm going to read this out loud, but I'm also going to send this in the chat. But I'm going to read this out loud. Basically, I'm Caroline Levitt for this. So I'm just going to read this out loud. To all congressmen and congresswomen, good afternoon. Following the passage of Senator Schumer's Turkish Stability Act, I have a few key updates to present. Can't say I'm pleased with what happened, but what is done is done. Regarding the Turkish civil war and the Kurdish population, I regret to inform this Congress that without the United States' backing, the civil war has spiraled into a significantly bloodier conflict than previously anticipated. We are unsure of the specifics regarding the numbers regarding the death toll at this time, but it seems that without US guidance, the Kurdish Republic alliance was unable to assemble well enough to combat Erdogan's falling regime. Furthermore, as a result of American evacuations, the Russian government has intervened in the civil war on the side of the Turkish government. The Russian war machine's backing of Erdogan's army helped it recover quite significantly, and fighting has drastically increased. It is unlikely that the Turkish government will be reinstated with full, complete control of the country, but the conflict is certain to go on for a significantly longer period of time without our support. In addition, US surveillance aircraft in the region have tracked several groups of strike aircraft flying over the Kurdish-occupied southeastern country. We suspect Erdogan has begun mass bombing campaigns specifically targeting the Kurdish people. With little check on his power, the campaigns are bound to continue for a very long time. Sadly, I also report that the Republican Guard leader Azar Azal has been found and captured by Turkish forces. After a nationally broadcast trial that lasted 16 minutes, Ozal was found guilty of treason, crimes against the state, conspiracy against the government, and countless other charges. None of it truly mattered, however. Ozal was executed within 2 hours of the trial's conclusion. The execution by firing squad was broadcast to every television across Turkey, and what followed was a stern warning against a future rebellion by Erdogan himself. Without a clear successor, the Republican People's Party has fallen alongside Ozal. His death marks the end of a firm, organized resistance against Erdogan's rule. It's clear that an American evacuation from the battlefield saved American lives, but traded them for countless civilians instead. Despite our best efforts, the Turkish civil war has yet to be resolved, and it's unlikely it will be anytime soon. 2. Regarding the war in Ukraine and the Russian Federation. The war in Ukraine has taken a turn for the worse. By providing little support for the efforts to resist movements by Russian troops in Operation Red Trident, the Russians were able to take Istanbul with ease, resulting in the successful passage of 14 naval vessels into the Black Sea. Even though the Ukrainian armed forces did their best to combat the new threat, the massive onslaught and bombardment of Odessa and other southern Ukrainian cities have stretched the resources of the Ukrainian military far too thin. Russian forces have, as a result, successfully taken the port city in the Donbas region and are continuing to push inward. It seems that without any further intervention, the Ukrainian war is almost lost. For his own safety, Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky has fled the country and is commanding his armies from abroad. 3. Regarding international diplomacy and the North Atlantic Treaty Organization. Not all is lost, however. With regard to the former North Atlantic Treaty Organization, significant progress has been made towards its restoration. Aside from Turkey, the original founding members have agreed to reassemble under a new alliance with a name yet to be determined. There is a possibility that this coalition may be strong and motivated enough to begin further involvement in the Ukrainian war and the Turkish civil war, but only time can tell. One can also only hope that this new organization has stronger accountability clauses than the last. Secretary General Mark Rutte will not be returning to the new organization, despite our objections. He cited an insurmountable level of stress that has caused hair loss as the reason for his departure. He has instead pursued a new career as the chief salesman for the company Keeps. As a result of the successful advances in Turkey and Ukraine, Russian President Vladimir Putin has refused to engage in diplomatic talks with the United States and allies. This is undoubtedly a large setback in the conflict's resolution efforts. It's unclear whether Ukrainian or Turkish issues will be resolved. It seems that after months of fighting and thousands of Americans lost, our best efforts have borne little fruit. We find ourselves in a worse situation before the conflict. I have decided to take measures of damage control back into my own hands, which are very famously stable and capable, the most so. Thank you for your assistance in this matter. With the heavy heart, President Donald J. Trump. So that's the scenario. Really
End
difficult.
scene.
Yeah, really difficult way for me to transition away from but judges, the time has come for y'all to do a little bit of oral feedback if y'all want to.
Overall feedback, I think in the first half there were like a couple of issues with just like things that you guys were saying like not being completely truthful, if I'm gonna be honest. Like if you go to like the brief that the DOW gave us, it literally says like the rebels have a larger army than the Turkish government. And also I just thought the logic was kind of flawed. Like a lot of you were saying like in order to like end the war like as soon as possible, we need to side with Turkey because they're like stronger. But I feel like that logic goes both ways. I feel like the side that gets the support from the US wins like no matter what in that scenario. So it's kind of like you can't go under the framing like Turkey can only win if we like if they like the US supports them and that's how you end the war as fast as possible. Like I just didn't buy that. There was also just some analysis that I just thought was like really really wonky and just some warrants that weren't really like 100% there. And I said that in like your feedback. You'll see like I kind of said what I kind of thought was weak in your speeches. In the second half, I wrote this at the top of my doc. If you chose to own like if you chose for your speech to be a speech on the amendment rather than like a speech like on the actual bill, you low-key just like shot yourself in the foot there because you're just completely dropped off the flow at that point. Like if you chose to give your one speech to like support this amendment and didn't actually speak in the debate, that's 100% your fault. No one is name dropping you. You have no relevance in the round. Everyone has forgotten about you at that point. The only thing you're remembered as is like the person who got us like 30 minutes behind at the start. And that's like your fault. Like that's like a strategic choice you made in this round. So you were probably punished for that if you didn't speak on the actual bill because we're not debating the amendment, we're debating the bill at the end of the day. Um Also, for the second half, I think that just as a round, there was a lot of struggles with like splits and stuff. I know at the beginning it was like very 7 point heavy, and then all of a sudden in the middle of the round it became like very like Turkish Stability Act heavy, and then all of a sudden at the end it was 7 point heavy again. You guys need to make sure that you're like communicating it with each other so that we're not taking like 20-second recesses every single two like speeches. Like there's no point for that. You guys also just like I don't know, you have the ability to like say it in chat on Zoom. If you just like make it clear to everyone, hey, I'm flipping. Okay, since you are flipping, these two people don't have to flip. Therefore, all of our splits are good. Then it just makes the rest of the round smoother, and then we wouldn't have like gone into a lot of the issues. I think also in both like halves of the debate, there were also some issues with like rehash. It was kind of more apparent in the second half than the first half. If someone has made an argument, I feel like in a scenario round where we've been given like 18 pages of information, there's definitely something for everyone to talk about. And there's no point to like restate an argument. If it is good, just be like Senator Blank on my side already told you this, and like that's why we win on this front. There's no reason it's like for you to go in depth into it again and again when I've already heard it 3 times. Like I understand the point by now. It's probably already on the flow. You don't need to say it again. Um, there were a lot of good like uses of the scenario though. I really like when in like scenario rounds I feel like actually engaging with all the stuff that's been given to you, and I think that's one of like the best things about the scenario. Um, and if you did do that and like if you were like going into the details and like the nitty-gritty of what was given to us, you were probably like heavily rewarded for that because it just shows like your dedication, like your eagerness to actually read everything that was given to you, even though we kind of all only had like a couple of days and it's a lot of work. I understand that. But like ultimately it is a final round. I think just like on argumentation, basically, it was really just like the lack of proper analysis and warranting, which really shot a lot of your arguments in the foot. And I think that if you can just like come up with stronger warrants, half of your arguments would have been like really, really good. And then presentation was like okay, like I don't think there was like a really like any person who had like stellar presentation. It was all kind of just like mid. But I don't think anyone's presentation was like inherently bad, so. But like there's like more specific stuff on argumentation in my doc, so you guys can read it. And then if you have any more questions, you can always like email me or reach out to me on Discord.
Can I pick up on
Okay.
that?
Oh, go ahead,
thank you,
David.
Mike. Oh, all right. Reason I wanted to pick up is because Audrey said she would talk about presentation. I do want to talk about presentation. Um, so I think it's a lot harder to like present online than in person, or sorry, it's a lot harder to present online, but there's like some usual pointers you can listen to. It's age-old advice, I'll repeat it. Put your hand on your neck real quick. If you talk from your neck, this is your throat voice. It's what you usually sound like. Like you can practice this. I don't know why it evokes your natural tone, but it does. If you put your hand on your head, that's your head voice. When you feel more vibrations in your head, that means you're going up. So when you're trying to be goofy or funny or happy, you dip into your head voice. Put your hand on your chest finally. When you dip down into your chest, you're delivering serious rhetoric. Usually, you're going to want to dip down into your chest, but only for moments of specific rhetorical importance. Yes, Victor, I am. So I think a lot of the struggle I see when giving rhetorical, like serious rhetorical narratives, and I saw it a lot here. We either stay too much in our throat voice or we give the entire speech in our chest voice. What you want to do is stay in your throat voice and only dip into your chest voice when it's actually rhetorically appropriate. Like we had a ton of intros on like the tragedies that happen in Turkey and like the super melodramatic like geopolitical system we were in. None of you sold me on it because we just like it was delivered in the same cadence. You need to make sure you're actually like modulating your tone appropriately. The other thing was we didn't really have a single varied speaker in this round. Everyone was really flat, even the people I liked. You don't need to, because I mean, I myself am a very expressive speaker. I fluctuate my tone a lot. You don't need to have like those crazy fluctuations when you're talking. You just need to have smaller fluctuations to keep yourself compelling. It's like you're talking in a regular conversation. Sometimes you're going to dip down like periodically to sound more serious, and you're going to dip up periodically to sound happier. You don't need to do it like this back and forth and back and forth. I just need to see more micro fluctuations because I'll be completely for real. It's hour 3 and then another asshole gets up here to speak. I am bored. I want to see actual tonal fluctuation. That's what I'm looking for. I felt that there was a distinguished lack of that. I think more speaking drills in general would be really helpful for pretty much everyone here. If you're flat, I put on your ballot that you're flat. If you're varied, I don't know if that was anyone. I put on your like ballot that you're too varied. Vocal fluctuation is key. Congress is such a lay event, you need to master it. That's everything I had on presentation. On actual flow, I feel like we didn't have enough engagement with other people. Every argument made in this round was to some extent novel, but I felt they all kind of like existed in an island. Like, I felt the flow of these rounds was very disjointed. And I didn't really get why either side won the round because nobody told me that their side won the round. You don't, you like, I guess early speakers are omitted from this, but if you're speaking late, you need to pull in the information we've already heard, and then you need to bring it forward and like combine everything together, crystallization. I did not get a proper crystal this entire round, so in my head, none of the sides won for both bills. Well, I guess all four. So I think integrating people into your speech and adding more ref is really appropriate. Um, the other thing, I think rehashes the other thing, but Audrey covered that. I mostly wanted to cover the presentation, but no, this round was pretty cool. All right, Al.
I would say I agree with a lot of the things that have already been said. Again, they've basically a lot of the feedback is the same. I will say I am a little upset in particular at people on the second debate when we had this whole amendment process that first of all I think dragged on for longer than it should, but also second of all because it dragged on for longer than it should, everyone who was not involved with that amendment process, who knew that there was, a splits issue or, a prep issue, should have had time to somewhat prep a speech, and we shouldn't have had a situation where at the very end, after we get done with this very lengthy amendment process, we end up with a situation where we now have to take another recess to go and find a sponsor for both bills, or, in particular, the 7 points bill was severely lacking in speakers. And then later on, after we do find someone does step up to sponsor, we end up having to break cycle again a bunch of times before we can get another speech in. So at the end, I do understand that flipping is a bit challenging for the people who flipped, but also at the same time, when there is this whole amendment process going on, there is a bit of a time that you can use to help yourself flip, and I feel like that wasn't utilized to the fullest extent, and I'm not very happy about that. Um, Otherwise, a lot of things are very similar. I do think that this round suffered from a notable lack of clash at the end of at the towards the more middle to late round speeches. The issue with when you do refutation, again, is that I think I wrote this on someone's ballot. It's that name dropping people alone is not refutation. When you do refutation, you need to actually have direct clash that involves the other person's argument and actually refuse it. Don't just name drop people's argument and then go off on something that is basically that something basically non-related or somewhat related and then pretend that you have directly refuted that argument. Very often I hear people like say like, oh, representative this and this, understand this, and then immediately like who represent this and this and who say that Erdogan cannot be trusted, remember this, and then start talking about something that literally does not interact with the whole Erdogan, trustworthiness situation, just as a hypothetical. So when you do your refutations, like please actually do direct clash. Another thing that was missing during this round was weighing and also quantified impacts. A lot of people will say, I've heard this line a lot, like something along the lines of, at the end of the day, what matters the most is saving lives. The thing is, very often after you say that, the end impact is that we save lives, you really don't quantify exactly how big of an impact that is, how many lives are being saved, what exactly is the impact of to people on the ground. And when that happens, you kind of give it, you make it harder to weigh the round, really, because we can't really compare magnitude very well besides this general idea that we are saving lives. So if both sides start claiming that we save lives somehow and there's absolutely no ability to quantify exactly how many lives are being saved or what exactly is being preserved, what is safe, what is the sacrifice for what gain, it becomes very, very unclear at the end of the day which side will win this debate. So yeah, I agree with David. I really don't think any side definitively won this debate because at the end of the day, like the clash was just not there. The weighing was basically non-existent. There were some attempts at weighing, I think, but they weren't like truly, clear attempts at weighing. They were like, oh, let's weigh, and then proceed to like not actually weigh. So that's all I have to say. Just like late rounds, lock in on the refutation, actually interact, adapt your speech, and also before a round, have some round vision maybe, and also, prep when you have the opportunity to. Don't just like sit around and watch the amendment process and eat popcorn.
Okay. I have a couple of things to say. First of all, I want to say I actually think that you guys generally did a better job than maybe the other judges think. Scenarios are hard. Like, there is a lot going on here. This is a borderline preposterous development of the status quo. You got this stuff pretty late. It's the holiday season. Stuff is going on. Like, the fact that all of you have enough topic knowledge to make relatively informed claims and arguments about how a policy is going to affect a hypothetical situation like this is frankly pretty impressive to me. Um, I like this. This was entertaining. Almost almost all congressional debate rounds get boring, and I don't think this one did. So kudos. I appreciate that. The first thing I want to talk about is amendments and what Congress is about and the importance of experimentation. Amendments are unusual, and I get that the process at the beginning of the second half was kind of clumsy and slow, but I think that the legislative process, especially for a scenario round, is about crafting a good piece of legislation that, protects American interests in the situation that is happening. Amendments are a very responsible way to do that. So I actually liked the amendments debate process. I think that the clash that happens in the consideration of Inamdar's debate contributed to the flow in the actual debate itself, because we're talking about why certain parts of the legislation exist and how they tie back to our strategic priorities in the world at large. So there's a lot of different like meta level analysis going on about what the problem is and what the solution should even be in the first place. I'm very, very glad that no one is taking Trump's proposal to deploy troops to Ukraine at face value. So, credit where credit is due to Senator Yan for saying, okay, let's maybe scale it back a bit, especially because apparently this room doesn't want to even deliver a sponsorship on that proposal. Um, I think a good sponsorship on both halves of this debate is like a bay leaf and chicken stock, right? If it's there, you don't notice it, but it tastes a lot better. If it's not there, then something is off. That's why giving good sponsorships, they don't have to be flashy. They just have to do their jobs well. And when they do, the debate is so much better because someone is actually taking accountability for explaining what the bill does and why it exists. That brings me to preparedness. The fact that we are 30 minutes into a debate on like the first half on the first bill and no one is raising their hand to give a speech. I don't know if anyone who spoke in the second half of the first debate is going to get ranked. Come on, guys. You're finalists at this tournament. You care enough about congressional debate to be debating between Christmas and New Year's. Lock in. Congressional debaters prepare 7 minutes of speech content without even having anything to read off of in 30 minutes. If you can't write 3 minutes of speech content in 30 minutes of debate, then something's wrong. And I have to give more credit to the people who are prepared to speak earlier in the flow. That's also why I really appreciated the people who gave sponsorships. I want to talk briefly about presiding officers. I think, and I'm very glad that amendments are making a comeback because I think they're an important part of Congress, which is ultimately a role play event. If you are not familiar with the amendment process, you are not qualified to be a presiding officer, and you should not be nominating yourself for it. If I see a presiding officer bungle the amendment process to the point that it takes 5, 10, 15 minutes longer than it needs to, and it really doesn't need to take that long if the chamber knows what they're doing, I don't see any reason why I should rank you. Like, you get to time people and enter stuff into a spreadsheet instead of debating at a debate tournament. So if you can't, get your shit together to do that, then I'm not going to rank you. I want to talk a little bit about content. I think the most important thing for me in Congress is specificity. I think my only issue with the content in this debate, in terms of like actual argumentation and substantiating your arguments, is people take it for granted that a lot of the claims they make are common knowledge and are going to be accepted by their judges without evidence. People are skipping around between 2 or 3 clashes at a time, making analytical claims that I simply cannot accept at face value. If this was an issue in one of your speeches, you will probably see it in my feedback for you if I'm asking you a bunch of questions during my feedback. How is this true? Do you have any evidence for this? Can you quantify this? Is there anything, beyond the scenario evidence that is going to lead me to believe this? And if you're quoting something from the scenario itself, you should be citing the document that you're quoting instead of just saying, the documents say. It's like 15 pages. I, would like to know which document you're citing so I can see if you're capping. And this comes back to, okay, let me actually talk about this in the context of the second half of the debate. I do not think that the debate lacked clash or weighing. I think that it lacked signposting and name dropping. There was a lot of implicit refutation, especially in the second half, if we're talking about, for example, which bill is better for the reconstitution of NATO. There was a lot of clash between both sides on which side could do this better, but no one was specifically tying back their analysis to what someone on the other side said, which could have been really, really easy. We had 3 speeches in a row talking about the Turkish Stability Act from Gullapali, he, and Henson, all of whom were talking about how pulling out of Turkey is going to make our allies in NATO want to come back together again. If you gave one of the speeches in favor of the 7 point plan after them, you should be like reffing each of these people individually. especially because there was a bit of a problem with rehash on the 7 point side of people, talking about how actually sticking to our guns in Turkey is going to be better for NATO. If you are making this claim, you have the opportunity to tie your analysis back to refute one of the claims made earlier by Gullapali or Henson. I think that's just one of the clearest examples of how, unfortunately, you do need to hold your judge's hands through the process because it is impossible, even for former debaters, to process every single word you are saying with every ounce of intention and meaning that comes behind it. This is why some of the best ranked speakers in rounds do not even necessarily have better content than some of the very technically talented speakers in this debate. It's just that it's very, very easy to understand why their arguments matter in the first place and how they tie back to the clash at large. It's the same for weighing. I actually picked up a lot of really very good weighing, especially early in the debates, by people who were taking us kind of from the early round constructives to the mid round refutation. It's just if you're gonna tell me if you're gonna be weighing, I would appreciate it if you tell me you're weighing. And there are just a couple of trigger phrases you can use to say, we need to compare this to this. And there were certainly a handful of you who did that very well. You'll probably find yourself among the top 5. That is my feedback. If anyone has any questions for anyone who gave feedback, go ahead.
How would you recommend to? Sorry, you can go.
Okay, I just have like some general feedback for like all the judges because this was like especially like kind of recent at the end. Were you guys, because there was a few points in the round where I felt like I don't want to speak if like I had to like go after a person speaking on the same side. So would you guys like drop anyone if they like spoke after, or like would you guys not do that? Since
You're
lists
talking
were
about
kind of
breaking
bad.
cycle?
Yeah, breaking cycle, yeah.
I start penalizing for it after the first cycle break. So if you break cycle once, that's just kind of unfortunate. If you break cycle twice, you get dropped to rank or two. I don't know how everybody else stands on it.
Yeah, I don't have a specific like rule for this, like formula or whatever. It kind of depends on the context of why we're breaking cycle. Um, and if it kind of depends, but yeah, usually if you're breaking cycle like once, like it's forgivable. Like I definitely understand. I've been in this situation too before, where it's like, oh, there is a bill that sometimes will have more people that personally agree with the neg than they do with the AF or the other way around. But yeah, if there is like a really severe like um, situation where we have, for example, in Yale semis, I was in Yale semis last year. My chamber, I think, broke cycle like 3 times in a row. There was that situation, and it didn't seem like anyone was really willing to flip despite it. So in that case, I would take off on the later speakers for that. But yeah, if it's a single cycle break, yeah, usually in within proper context, it isn't a big deal for me.
I agree with what David and Andy said. Also, it just matters on like the content of your speech. Like if your content is bad and you're just breaking cycle like once, like it's not going to penalize you. It's just like another speech at that point. But it's like if you're breaking cycle just like once, but it's like the exact same speech as like what the person who went just before you said, like you're going to be penalized not because you're breaking cycle, but just because that's a rehash. So it's like you just need to make sure that like whatever's happening in the round, like if you see that like 4 speeches have gone by and you're still not willing to flip, that's on that like that's you're bad at that point if you're still not willing to flip and you're just going to give like the 5th AF in a row, and like you will get penalized at that point, not because it's rehash, and also just because you're showing a willingness to like not flip, even though it would most likely help you and also help your judges. So like that's the only scenario in which like breaking cycle is bad for you, I guess.
My opinion is different, but I will preface by saying my opinion doesn't really matter. There is a taboo in Congress against breaking cycle. It will almost never do you any favors to break cycle. Unless the difference is between giving a speech and not giving a speech, especially if it just turns out to be a little bit off towards the end, just give the speech, especially because towards the end of the debate, there's going to be so much to do in the clash that it should be very possible for 2 speeches to happen in a row on the same side and cover completely different parts of the debate. I think that's especially true in a scenario round like this where you can cover so much ground between like Turkish politics, Kurdish politics, Russia and Ukraine, the integrity of the NATO alliance, like the strategy surrounding the Bosporus Strait. I think it's theoretically possible for like five different 7 point plan speakers to go in a row and cover different ground in every speech, and I wouldn't really hold it against them. That's not what happened, unfortunately, because debate tends to gravitate towards a couple of clashes. And if people do make the same argument about NATO 3 times in a row, that's what I hold against them. I don't mind that you're breaking cycle, I just mind that you're making the same arguments as the person before you.
Okay, yeah, thank you.
Yeah, go ahead, Arjun. I think you raised your hand for.
Sweet. So I usually only have evidence that's quantitative. Like I hate qualitative evidence, but I know that a lot of you guys are talking about you guys want quantitative statistics. What were you guys like looking for specifically within this scenario? Because like, especially when we got into the second, like the status quo in the second speech was like so far different than the status quo that we have stats on like in this world. So like what I was like, I'm like, what kind of stats you guys want? Was like, I don't know how to like weigh like this conflict versus this conflict when like 100,000 people are dead and everyone's displaced.
So one thing I'm surprised no one mentioned, for example, this is a really easy thing you can pull from the status quo, and it really defines a lot of the clash about Russia in the second half is what's their military situation like, right? Like a lot of people assume that the Russian military is still like the second biggest military in the world, but a lot of their capacity has been drained since the start of the Ukraine war. So there was this clash briefly towards the end of the debate, this confusion that never really got settled. Do they have the capacity to successfully invade northern Turkey? The answer to that question doesn't lie in the scenario. You can find that just on the front page of Google search results if you look for it. That's exactly why like a strong status quo block is still really important in a late round speech because these types of you know questions pop up no matter what in a debate like this, and you need to draw on information from the world as it is to answer them. And I think that was one of the most glaring examples of status quo evidence that really was necessary to draw any conclusions about fighting Russia.
I also just think, for me, the way that I view scenario rounds in Blue Key Finals, I gave like one card across two speeches. Like I didn't really need that many cards. I will also just say like I was giving like the last speech in the round at that point, so there wasn't much like squo framing that I needed to do. But I will say something that I don't think I really need like cards because the status quo in the world is different from the status quo in like this world. But I will say just like good analysis and showing me good understanding of like the actual scenario at hand also really helped because like kind of going back to what I was talking about before, like the number of like how many soldiers were in like the Kurdish insurgency or like the Turkish armed forces, and like if you read like the first document in the file, it literally says like the soldiers who are like switching from like the Turkish armed forces into like the rebel groups, they're also taking like Turkish weaponry and stuff. And then people were saying like, oh, these rebels have like no weapons and they don't have like state of the art weaponry and they're like weak. But like this is not true. First of all, they're getting weapons from like the black market. They're stealing like intelligence and like weapons from like the Turkish army themselves. Like they have more soldiers than the Turkish army like in general. Like there's a lot of things going on, but it's just like I feel like no one was talking about that. And I don't really need numbers to describe that. Like I just need someone to show me that they like read it all and they're like, hey, like these rebels aren't as weak as like what the other side is trying to tell you. Like they have the ability to like stand on their own, but in order for them to win and in order for them to achieve their purpose, they just need like the US to help them. And I think that in a scenario round, in my own opinion, like I think that just like good analysis and like showing understanding of what other people are saying and how even though what they're saying is like logically true, how it still doesn't make any sense and like in the scenario it doesn't really work. I think that's like the strongest way to go about, and I don't necessarily think that you need a lot of cards or like quantifying statistics in if you're not like in like the first like two cycles.
I mean, the thing is, I think what I usually mean when I ask for either quantification or statistics is simply details. Usually I'll use the word details, but basically the issue with a lot of with some of the claims that I had heard, not all of them, but certain claims I had heard basically had this assertion that either the rebels are weak or the Turkish government is going to come back. We're going to give them a second chance that they're going to come back, or Russia is going to have the capability to go and and ruin Istanbul. Like I think there was a speech that said something about Putin marching on Istanbul without firing a single bullet. Like, I mean, there is as much as it's could be a valid claim, I do want to hear some evidence or some sort of comparison to back up the idea that this is indeed that this side really does have a military advantage. And this doesn't necessarily have to come from the scenario doc. For example, like for the Russia situation, you could always just look up like present day sources about how Russia's military is doing in comparison, and compare them to say what's going on in the scenario docs, and sort of do this kind of weighing or not weighing, like this sort of comparison, say like, oh, Russia's troops are 60%, hypothetically, like 60% involved in Ukraine and are barely holding the front lines, right? That means their maximum force projection is decreased by nearly a half, right? Something like that would make it more believable than just saying that, just asserting that, hey, Russia's big, Russia's strong, Russia will go march on Istanbul without any resistance. It makes it a bit less believable. It doesn't always have to be numbers, but if you can find numbers, like the doc does have numbers, which is cool. But just some sort of details, like whether that's like technological capability. Like I think the doc said in the first scenario, like the first phase of it, like the Kurdish insurgents had resorted to guerrilla warfare because they were indeed less equipped than, say, the Turkish government. But it didn't really say a lot about, say, the technological capabilities of Greece and Bulgaria, but it said more about the manpower. So when you do sort of when you actually like show me that you went in, read the evidence, did your research, and know about all of like the relative strengths of all these militaries and how that might interact with the scenario, then I'm much more willing to believe you. Yeah.
I think, okay. It's a little weird for scenarios. It bugged me on my ballot a lot. People mentioning past precedent, but not saying how the past precedent was correlational to the specific scenario, really PMO. Like, so many people on the second bill were like, there's past precedent, guys, this can't work. And you didn't actually explain why. I want to see direct correlations between evidence and what you're actually saying. All pieces of evidence are valid. Usually, my rule of thumb with evidence is that it's like a substitute for when you can't use a logical warrant. So, like, most claims can be logically warranted. Like, you want peace, except you can't logically warrant, like, Turkey wanted peace in 2017 because of some, like, thing. Like, that's something you need evidence for. I think your original question was, like, how do you use quantitative evidence in this specific scenario? You need to show me A, direct correlation between what you're saying and what the scenario is, and B, you need to show me its relevance. So just be nuanced and make sure it's relevant to the scenario. And yeah, that's about it.
Yeah, I gotta strongly agree with the past precedent thing. That was something that I've forgotten to say. But yeah, some of the past precedent comparisons really gotta justify why this is a valid past precedent. Like the use, for example, of, say, Afghanistan, the situation that we had supporting the government in Afghanistan would be a bit different from, say, the situation from Turkey, right? The doc says the Turkish Republican forces are on the verge of victory, but Afghanistan at that time was, first of all, it was already the official government, like the Republic of Afghanistan was like officially there, and the Taliban were the insurgents, and second of all, they didn't have nearly as much control over Afghanistan as the Turkish situation has, like the Republican Army has over like Turkey over this in this situation. So when you make these comparisons, they got to be believable and they got to be comparable. Yeah.
Go ahead, Daniel.
Yeah, so what's the general format for a crystal under a scenario built like this? Because like I can't imagine just like the qualitative evidence part or the quantitative evidence part, just like you said now. I can't imagine how you'd group such different parts because there's so many different areas around scenarios like this. How would you manage to group those together?
Pick your battles. Don't try to win everything at the same time. So many people try to like cover all the three main biggest clashes. And again, in a debate like this, there are a lot of them. Like you can cover bases on, let's see how someone broke it down, for example, talking about like keeping the integrity of the new regime that we have in Turkey, restoring the legitimacy of NATO, and deterring a Russian attack on northern Turkey and the Bosphorus. If I were a late round speaker, I would think a little bit about like the quantification and the weighing about which argument is the most important for my side to win. And then my whole speech is going to be about that. Because that way I can refute all the arguments that people have made that are relevant to that to get them out of the way. I can introduce any evidence that's necessary to resolve gridlock or disagreement that people haven't been able to prove convincingly one way or another. And I can explain why it matters more than the other clashes I chose not to deal with. A lot of debaters bite off more than they can chew, and that's why they end up with underdeveloped arguments that don't really win them anything. Like it's better to win one clash than to piddle around in three and not really convince your judges that your side is winning on any of those three.
Also, if I were to also crystal this round, I think that there was like a large misconception between like both sides. Even in the 7 point plan, you're still like negotiating for peace talks. So like if I were on like either side, I would say like, hey, peace talks occur in either world after you pass either bill. But under that scenario, it just becomes like, do we like neutralize or do we like keep fighting basically? And like that's and like you just like weigh under that framework. So if you can just like establish a framework clearly like that, then it makes it really, really easy to like look at the round and like evaluate what people have said to like the most important stuff. Because if like you go under that framework, you can weigh under like the future of NATO. You could do it on like the Russia-Ukraine war, and you can do it on the future of Turkey. Like there's a lot of different ways for you to do it. Like as Nick said, you have to like pick your battles. But I think like establishing a clear framework to show like what you're like weighing it under is like really good. Because if you just say like weigh on like whichever side like saves the most amount of lives. Like I feel like that's already been done. Like I can like compare numbers in my head. But if you like give me like this like both things happen either way, we have to like side with the side that, like makes things better for the future. And that's either through like continuing to like help the insurgents or to just like neutralize completely. And like if someone weighed on that, like that would have been really, really good. And you just have to establish like a clear framework and signpost that well.
The thing I usually I crystal a lot. The thing I look for is unanswered questions in the round. Where if you're paying attention to the flow, there's always going to be two or three things that are unclear. As like a speaker that you actually want to combine, like you don't necessarily need to combine arguments, just when you answer those questions, you end up combining arguments. Because when you're looking for what other speakers are failing to do, you naturally just refute them. Like you don't need to go line by line by line by line. You could just look at what this like what's been omitted in the round. Because a lot of the time your job isn't to like carry other people's points. Your job is to win the round. A lot of that comes in answering the questions of the debate. So Audrey was right with framing, Nick was right with pick your battles. Just want to